Chapter 300. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are available here. Xiao Lulang didn't know anything about the token. Naturally, he didn't know that Editor Tsin would take the token to Immortal Music House. That was a veritable brothel. The Qinglu Yamen, such as the Hanlin Academy, could never step in without permission. Who would have thought that Editor Tsin would be so bold? However, for the next 2 days, Editor Tsin didn't come to Hanlin Academy for duty, nor did he send anyone to ask for leave. On the first day, everyone was puzzled, but they didn't think of the worst. They only thought that he might be sick, or that something urgent had happened at home. So he couldn't report to Hanlin Academy. The second day was the same. Editor Yang had the mentality that he used to be my subordinate. So he sent someone to Editor Tsin's home. Editor Tsin was an ordinary scholarly family in the capital. Father Tsin was a scholar who opened a private school to support the family. Mother Tsin was a concubine's daughter from an old official's family, so she had some family property. The Tsin family wasn't considered wealthy in the capital, but they had a house to live in and servants to order around. Unexpectedly, the Tsin family also planned to go to Hanlin Academy to find Editor Cien. They thought that Editor Tsin was on duty at Hanlin Academy. This kind of situation had happened before. The busiest time in Hanlin Academy was when Editor Tsin didn't return home for 3 days. But this time, it was obviously not the case. Both parties immediately reported to the authorities. The authorities solved the case very quickly, or perhaps the case itself wasn't that difficult. They found Editor Tsin's body in the corner of Immortal Music House's west gate. We've seen many cases like this. Another person who wanted to sneak into Immortal Music House was beaten to death as a thief. Immortal Music House's threshold was high. Ordinary people couldn't enter, but it couldn't stop people from having wishful thinking. Coincidentally, Immortal Music House's west gate was a place where sundries were piled up. The guards of Immortal Music House weren't to be trifled with. Coming uninvited was a thief, so they would be beaten to death. The Tsin family didn't believe it, and Hanlin Academy didn't believe it. However, Editor Tsin had indeed changed out of his Hanlin Academy uniform, and was wearing a newly made navy blue brocade robe. He had also shaved his beard. It was obvious that he was going to meet someone important. Perhaps they put it on him after they killed him. The Tsin family said. Killing an official of the imperial court was different from killing an ordinary person. However, this conjecture was quickly denied because the government constables found the carriage driver that Tsin Xiu had hired that day. The coachman explained that when Tsin Weixiu got on the carriage, he was wearing Hanlin Academy's official robes. After getting off the carriage, he changed his clothes and shaved his beard. I sent him to the Cool Breeze Inn. After that, I saw him go in the direction of the Celestial Music House. With this, Tseng Xiu's path and purpose were basically determined. Moreover, with Tseng Xiu's identity, it was indeed impossible for him to openly enter the Immortal Music residence. In that case, the only way was to climb over the wall. The people of Immortal Music House didn't know that he was an official of the imperial court, and only thought that he was an ordinary lecher. Naturally, they didn't hold back. This kind of matter could be brought to court. After all, they had killed someone. No matter what, Immortal Music House had to take some responsibility. However, in this way, Tseng Xiu's reputation would be completely ruined. In the end, Immortal Music House gave some consolation money, and ended this matter. Paper can't wrap fire. The news of Tseng Xiu being beaten to death in a brothel still spread within the Hanlin Academy. Although no one talked about it openly, they were all discussing it in private. You guys say? Why would such an upright person like Tseng Xiu suddenly go to a brothel? Could it be that he was instigated by Xiao Xiu? In our Hanlin Academy, apart from him, no one else had an affair with a brothel girl. She'll lower your voice. Scholar Han, you are not allowed to discuss this matter. Did I say anything wrong? The day before Tseng Xiu disappeared, I saw him talking to Xiao Xiu. I don't know what they said, they were very emotional. Just as they were discussing this, Xiao Lulang walked over from not far away. They instantly fell silent. After exchanging glances, they each scattered. However, Xiao Lulang heard everything that he should have heard. Of course, he didn't instigate Seng Xiao. However, when a person was ostracized, even breathing was wrong. Ever since he made up his mind to marry his precious granddaughter to Royal Prince An, Grand Secretary Yuan had people gather the poetry collections that Royal Prince An had left outside over the years. He carefully looked through them. He was indeed a talented and ambitious person. Many of the poems that had been passed down to this day were written when he was a hostage in the Qin country. Although he was still young and inexperienced, he was in a foreign land, shouldering the lifeline of a country, enduring humiliation, and still having such youthful lofty sentiments. He was indeed a rare talent. Grand Secretary Yuan had people deliver the poetry collections to his granddaughter. He understood that his granddaughter was talented and arrogant. She didn't like ordinary people, but a gifted scholar like Royal Prince An should be able to enter her eyes. Grand Secretary Yuan didn't know that the little Taoist nun's face was as black as charcoal when she saw the poems on the table. Why did he want her to read poems? She only wanted to read novels, alright. Speaking of which, it had already been so long. Why hadn't the third book of Chronicles of the Cloud Court come out yet? Wasn't it supposed to be one book a month? It had already been 1 month and 3 days. Had he become arrogant? In Jadewater Alley, the old chancellor had just finished writing the last word when he put down his brush and sneezed fiercely. Achoo! He had just taken over the directorate, so his salary wasn't high. The main reason was that all his savings had been robbed by the old matriarch, and he wanted to get a new carriage. In order to cope with his increasing expenses, he had no choice but to return to his old profession and write novels. He hadn't written for many years. His previous pen name had long been forgotten, so he used a new pen name, Zui Mengdi. Just hearing it made one feel very emotional. His first comeback novel told the story of a sick and weak hostage of an enemy country, who caused chaos in the imperial court and a love and hate relationship with the princess of the Great Xia dynasty. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he indicated at the beginning that this was a dream of the hostage. However, even so, it still made people unable to stop chasing after it. The first 2 books sold very well, and he made a small profit. The third book should have been handed in a long time ago, but there had been a lot of things to do at the directorate recently, so he had delayed it. In order to express his apology, he decided to personally send the original manuscript to the study room that he was working with. Today, the little nun also went to the study room to rush the manuscript. The old chancellor couldn't help but prick up his ears to listen. Behind the bookshelf, the page boy was introducing other novels to the little nun. The little nun flipped through a few books in boredom and said, "Not good. It's not as exciting as the story of Zui Mengdi." The old chancellor thought that she would say that his story had new ideas, but unexpectedly, she said that it was exciting. The old chancellor cleared his throat. It seemed quite exciting. The little nun said, "The part where the princess royal divorced the prince consort was quite good. The princess of the imperial family shouldn't have suffered such grievances." The princess royal was actually just an unremarkable supporting character in the novel. The plot about her wasn't written in detail, and the divorce of the prince consort was only briefly mentioned. He didn't expect her to have such a deep impression. She was a soulmate. The old chancellor coughed lightly, and couldn't help but have some interest in communicating with the other party. Perhaps he might be able to find more inspiration. "This Taoist priest also likes this book?" The little nun said, "It's okay. The writing is passable." The old chancellor thought, "I'm the chancellor of the directorate, but I'm only passable in writing?" However, in order to lower the threshold of the audience, he did deliberately weaken his writing style, and added a large amount of vernacular to ensure that it was easy to understand. However, in order to cater to the aesthetic of scholars, he also added a lot of original poems. Usually, this kind of part would be skipped by ordinary people and wouldn't affect the progress of the plot. The old chancellor asked again, "What do you think of the character Princely?" Princely was the main character in the book, the sickly hostage who subverted the entire Great Xia dynasty. The little nun curled her lips and casually flipped through a novel she took off from the shelf. "He's good at scheming, but not at love. He's blind." The old chancellor. The little nun sighed. He doesn't want the great general of Great Xia and wants the sixth princess. If he's not blind, then what is? He's so black-hearted and sickly. He and the mighty and cold General Fu are a match made in heaven. Doesn't he see that General Fu is infatuated with him? The old chancellor's mouth twitched. When did General Fu become infatuated with Prince Li? Why didn't I know? The little nun sighed. And the Empress of Great Xia, she's also blind. How can she like the Emperor of Great Xia when concubine Hua is so good to her? Isn't it good to be together with concubine Hua? Concubine Hua flirted with her so many times. The old chancellor. No, concubine Hua didn't flirt with her. Concubine Hua and the Empress have a pure superior subordinate relationship. No, miss. No, Taoist. How did you read the book? What did you see? Concubine Hua and the Empress of Great Xia are mortal enemies. They both stabbed each other in the heart. Wait, that's not the point. The point is that they are both women. General Fu and Prince Li are both men. Yi, is it okay for a little girl like you to have such a strong taste? The old chancellor's heart was pierced by thousands of arrows. He felt that he could no longer look at this book in the eye. In the blink of an eye. It was June and summer had completely arrived in the capital. Last winter, the capital was exceptionally cold. This year, it was exceptionally hot. Because some daughters fainted in class, the girls' school even had a few days off. The news of the little nun of the Yuan family, returning to the capital quickly spread in the capital. But what really made the news was the marriage between the little nun and Princeton. It was said that Grand Tutor Zhuang intended to marry the Yuan family, and had already sent someone to collect the marriage invitation. After the marriage invitation, as long as the two's birth characters did not clash, the marriage could be discussed. This year, the little nun of the Yuan family was not the only daughter to be discussed. Zhuang Yueshi, Du Xiaoyan, Gu Jinyu and the other daughters were all of marriageable age. Their families had already started to deal with it. Gu Jinyu also ended her life at Xiaoyu Zhuang, and returned to the manor to wait for the marriage arranged by old Madame Gu and concubine Shu. Old Madame Gu furrowed her white eyebrows when she saw that Gu Nianji was tanned and looked haggard. How did you end up like this? Didn't you say that you were only going to stay at the manor for a few days? What have you done? How can I bring you out in this state? Gu Jinyu did not speak. She did not curry favor with old Madame Gu like before. Old Madame Gu was furious and said impatiently, "Don't go out these few days. Stay in the boudoir and recuperate." Gu Jinyu said softly, "I want to visit mother." It would have been better if she did not mention this. Now that she mentioned it, old Madame Gu was furious. That damned Yao Shi used her to deal with concubine Ling, and moved out of the manor. When others asked her, she could only vaguely say that she moved back with Gu Yan. The noble ladies and daughters in the capital thought that Yao Shi and Gu Yan moved back to the manor to recuperate, and did not say anything. They knew that Gu Yan's health was not good. Hearing that Gu Jinyu wanted to visit Yao Shi, old Madame Gu naturally did not allow it. "You're not allowed to go anywhere. If you still think of yourself as the daughter of the Marquis' estate, then stay in the manor obediently." "Yes," Gu Jinyu respectfully responded. But although she agreed verbally, she turned around and secretly left the manor. "Mother." She came to Jade Water Alley. After getting off the carriage, she eagerly entered the courtyard. Yao Shi was sitting in the hall playing the lottery. At this time, the children in the family had gone to school to work, and had not returned yet. Guyan had also gone to school. Only she and Nanny Feng were idle at home. Actually, they were not idle. In the morning, Auntie Lu called her over to help her daughter embroider a wedding dress. In the afternoon, the Wan family's maidservants came to ask for guidance on needlework and cooking. The Wan family's maidservants had just left. Her days were quite fulfilling. The baby in her belly was growing day by day. She could already feel the fetal movement. Occasionally, she would miss Gu Jinyu. But when she heard that she had gone to the manor outside the city to relax, she could not call her back. Hearing a familiar voice, she paused. Just as she was about to turn around, Gu Jinyu had already walked over. He planned to throw himself into her arms as usual, but he suddenly saw her slightly bulging belly. When the weather became hot, it was easy to show off one's belly if one wore less clothes. Yao Shi's body was thin, making her 5-month pregnant belly look very prominent. Gu Jinyu glared at her. Mother, you're back? Yao Shi smiled knowingly and took her hand. She nodded and said, and mother is pregnant. It's been 5 months. In that case, concubine Ling was pregnant when she was still in the manor. Halfway through her words, Gu Jinyu realized that she had mentioned someone she should not have mentioned. She said guiltily, sorry mother. I shouldn't have mentioned that person. Concubine Ling had harmed Yao Shi for more than 10 years. Yao Shi was indeed unwilling to mention her. Yao Shi skipped this topic and patted the chair beside her. Sit down. Let mother take a good look at you. Gu Jinyu sat down. Yao Shi raised her hand and stroked her hair. She said with heartache and shock, you've become tanned and your hands have become thicker. Have you had a hard time in the manor these past few months? Marquis Ding An's manor had many manors. There were quite a few outside the capital. Yao Shi did not know which one she had gone to. Gu Jinyu lowered her eyes and did not speak for a while, but a tear fell onto the back of Yao Shi's hand. Yao Shi immediately panicked. Jinyu, what happened to you? Gu Jinyu did not reply. Instead, she stood up and knelt in front of Yao Shi. She choked out, Mother, Jinyu was wrong. Yao Shi was completely confused by her actions. Her heart also began to panic. Get up and speak. What happened to you? Did something happen to him? Don't scare mother. Gu Jinyu shook her head with tears in her eyes. She held on to Yao Shi's hand that was about to help her up. She sobbed and said, Mother, I've let mother down. Yao Shi panicked. What happened to you? Second young miss is too much. Isn't it just not visiting madam for a while? Madam is your mother. Would she mind this? Granny Fong walked out of the kitchen with a smile. In her hands was a plate of fried peanuts. She said to Yao Shi, wasn't madam craving for this just now? It's done. A pregnant person did not have any resistance to food. Her attention was immediately drawn over. She said to Gu Jinyu, you also have a taste. Granny Fong placed the peanuts on a small stool to the side and helped Gu Jinyu up. The floor is cold. Madam understands that second young miss is being filial. There is no need to blame yourself. Is second young miss living well in the manor? I see that second young miss has grown taller. Her body is not as thin and her face is not as pale. Gu Jinyu's original thinness was all thanks to Consort Shu. He did not eat sweet food or fatty food, making him look weak and frail. Now, although he was a little darker and his skin was a little rougher, it was true that he was a little rounder. Yao Shi took a look and found that it was true. Gu Jinyu was interrupted by Granny Fong and could not continue to confess to Yao Shi. She followed Granny Fong's words and said, I miss mother too much. I haven't come to see mother for so long. I didn't even know that mother was pregnant. I'm really unfilial. Yao Shi sighed. So it was because of that. You scared me to death. I thought that something had happened. I don't blame you. But why did you suddenly go to live in the manor? Are you unhappy at the Marquis' estate? No. Gu Jinyu lowered her head. Gu Jinyu lowered his eyes. That place is very close to father's residence. I can go over and keep father company. I see. The relationship between father and daughter was very good. Yao Shi did not suspect anything. The mother and daughter chatted for a while. Granny Fong kept them company. Later on, Yao Shi was tired and went to take an afternoon nap. Granny Fong then brought Gu Jinyu to the front yard and said to Gu Jinyu, second young miss, no matter what you wanted to say to madam, I hope that you will not say it again. Gu Jinyu was stunned. Granny Fong said, madam suffers from very serious depression. It was not easy for eldest young miss to cure her. This servant does not wish for madam to fall ill again. Furthermore, madam is pregnant now. She cannot be provoked. I did not think it through. Gu Jinyu lowered her head sadly. I originally wanted to apologize to mother. I did something that let elder sister down. I stole elder sister's credit and caused elder sister to be hurt. I don't want to hide it from mother anymore. Granny Fong naturally knew about these things, but she did not expect Gu Jinyu to have the courage to admit it. Digression, little Taoist nun. You can't do anything. You are the best at tearing apart couples. Old Chancellor. I am not Consort Hua. Zhuang Jins is also not the Empress of Xia. If she is not, then she is not. Asterisk, asterisk, caret, asterisk, asterisk. Then may I ask what the name of the Empress of Xia is? Old Chancellor, Sei Jinzhuang. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are also updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1122240096. HTML Genius remembered this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikago mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 301. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. When Gu Jiao returned to Bishui Alley, Gu Jinyu had already left. Nanny Fong had been guarding the door. When she saw her return, she hurriedly went forward and told her about Gu Jinyu's visit. I know. Gu Jiao nodded. Nanny Fong noticed her stiffness and asked worriedly, Eldest miss, what's wrong? I'm fine, Gu Jiao said. Today, she met a tough opponent at the martial arts center. Her arm was actually numb. She hadn't met such an interesting opponent for a long time. Looking at second Miss's appearance today, she seems to be sincerely repentant. Nanny Fong said thoughtfully. What did she experience at the farmstead that made her change so much? Gu Jiao paused and said, she didn't go to the farmstead. She went to Ciu farmstead. Nanny Fong was surprised. Eldest miss has seen her before? Yes, I happened to see her once. Gu Jiao told her about her visit last time. She actually went to that kind of place to suffer. Nanny Fong suddenly didn't know what to say. Nanny Fong had watched Gu Jinyu grow up. Nanny Fong could tell whether she was sincerely remorseful or putting on an act. Second miss seemed to have really changed. Then would eldest miss forgive her? Gu Jiao didn't say anything and stepped into the house. After June, the sky turned dark late. When Xiao Lulang returned from Hanlin Academy, the sky was still bright. Little Jing Kong went for a walk with chickens. Gu Jiao was arranging rooms for people next door. Before the old lady regained her memory, in order to make it easier to rob the old chancellor of his private money, she asked the old chancellor to connect the two houses and open a door on the wall of the backyard. As soon as Xiao Lulang arrived at the backyard, he saw Gu Jiao carrying several clean mattresses over. He stopped her. Is there a guest at home? Gu Jiao said. It's Gu Yan's secret guards. Not only had they arrived, but they had also brought Yuya, from the hot spring villa. This was Gu Jiao's order. Gu Yan had lived in the farmstead for so long, but the only servant he hadn't chased out was Yuya, Even Nanny Fong had been chased out by him once. There were more and more things to do at home. Gu Jiao thought that it would be good to have a clever maid. Fortunately, there were many empty rooms next door. After the two families were connected, they could be considered one family. Thus, senior servant Fong had already moved in, and didn't have to squeeze in the same room as Madame Miao. Xiao Lulang also helped to move some things. The two secret guards were usually nowhere to be seen. Yuya was at the scene the entire time. It was her first time seeing Xiao Lulang. She was so excited that her eyes almost popped out. Yeah. Was this the son-in-law? Son-in-law is so handsome. Gu Jiao tilted her head. Oh, I think so too. Yuya's explicit praise didn't affect Xiao Lulang, but Gu Jiao's understated words made Xiao Liulang's heart feel strange. He cleared his throat and said calmly, I'll go see if the people from Jingkong are back yet. After saying that, he turned around and left. Looking at his strange walking posture, Yuya quietly moved closer to Gu Jiao and asked with an indescribable expression, But eldest miss, why does the son-in-law walk with his hands and feet in the same direction? There was no need to learn martial arts today. When Gu Yan returned from Qinghe Academy, He saw the secret guards in Yuya, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Young master, do you still remember this servant? Yuya asked happily. He had almost forgotten Yuya name. After a long time he frowned and said, Bean Sprout? Yuya face darkened. All of a sudden everyone came back. After dinner, Xiao Lulang checked the children's homework as usual. He didn't bring his experience in Hanlin Academy back home. He restrained himself and tidied up his emotions. He patiently tutored little Jing Kong, who had been arguing with him the entire time, as well as Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan, who had been daydreaming all night. At night, when everyone was asleep, he took out the ancient book and continued to study the formulas. Gu Jiao gently pushed open the unlocked door. Can I come in? Come in, Xiao Lulang said. Gu Jiao pushed open the door and entered with a bowl of lotus seed soup in her hand. The weather was hot, so the lotus seed soup had been chilled with well water to cool down and relieve the heat. Xiao Lulang was wearing thin pajamas. Because he had sweated a little, the pajamas stuck to his body and inadvertently outlined the contours of his body. His young body exuded a vigorous masculinity that perfectly combined with his youthful aura. Gu Jiao's eyes grew on his body. Xiao Lulang coughed softly and said, It's so late. Why aren't you asleep? Gu Jiao placed the lotus seed soup beside his hand. Lotus seed soup. Xiao Lulang. Have you eaten? Gu Jiao shook her head. Xiao Lulang. Then do you want to? Want to what? Eat together? Or do you want to eat first? There was only a bowl and a spoon. You eat. Xiao Lulang quickly pushed the bowl in front of her. Gu Jiao sat down in front of him and looked at him with her chin in her hands. I don't want to eat. I made it for you. If Xiao Lulang continued to refuse, it would be inexcusable. He paused, took the bowl, and tasted it gently. The bitter lotus seed heart was picked, and mint and osmanthus sugar were added. It was cool and sweet, but not greasy. Is it delicious? Gu Jiao asked. It's delicious, he said. Gu Jiao curved her lips. Xiao Lulang finished the bowl of lotus seed soup. Gu Jiao kept looking at him with her chin in her hands. Actually, the weather was hot, and she didn't wear much. She wore a thin summer shirt over her pajamas. She didn't grow much in the past 2 months, but her figure became more exquisite. Xiao Lulang swore that he didn't mean to peek, but she was sitting in front of him. He inadvertently glanced at her. Gu Jiao's lapel was slightly open, revealing a small section of pink undergarment lace. This was supposed to be a normal attire, but in the darkness of the night, it gave off a sense of privacy and charm. Why are you sweating? Gu Jiao tilted her head and asked, Is the lotus seed soup not cold enough? It was strange that he could sweat while eating something cold. Xiao Lulang didn't know how to explain. He wasn't just sweating. His heart was beating faster. This had nothing to do with the feelings between a man and a woman. It was purely a man's instinct. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman alone, she was so gentle and quiet. Although this girl was very likely to be an irritable kitten who liked to explode, she was too deceptive at this moment. Just when Xiao Lulang didn't know how to answer, Gu Jiao suddenly stood up and leaned towards him across the table. The distance between them was shortened. Her warm breath and fragrance assailed his nostrils. The pink undergarment lace was right in front of his eyes. He quickly closed his eyes, but the blood rushed to his head in an instant. Gu Jiao gently wiped his sweat. He still didn't dare to open his eyes. Suddenly he heard Gu Jiao chuckle softly. Then the sound of clothes sliding could be heard. The clothes are done. You can open your eyes now. This. Xiao Lulang suddenly didn't know whether to open his eyes or not. Gu Jiao couldn't stop laughing. If she wasn't afraid of waking up little Jing Kong, she would have laughed out loud. Xiao Lulang didn't feel the shadow in front of him leave for a long time. He could still smell her fragrance and breath. He was a normal man. It was impossible for him to be indifferent when a woman was so close to him in the middle of the night. He took a deep breath. He wanted to tell her to go back to her room and rest. Before he could say anything, he heard her say, Look what's outside the window. He turned his head, opened his eyes, and looked at the moonlight outside the window. Everything was as usual. There's nothing, he said as he turned his head. At this moment, Gu Jiao supported herself on the table and moved forward. When Xiao Lulang turned his head, he saw Gu Jiao's movement. However, it was too late for him to avoid it. Jiao Jiao, little Jing Kong's sleepy voice suddenly sounded from inside the curtain. Gu Jiao retreated. Xiao Lulang's lips touched the air. He wanted to avoid it when he couldn't, but if he really avoided it, Gu Jiao came to the bedside and lifted the curtain. Little Jing Kong didn't wake up, but he seemed to want to pee. He covered his little butt and said, "Jiao Jiao, let me do it." Xiao Lulang came over and carried the half-asleep little guy to the backyard to pee. Some things couldn't be continued once they were interrupted. Xiao Lulang put the little guy back on the bed. The weather was too hot. Little Jing Kong only wore a small red doo-doo and slept on the mat. Xiao Lulang closed the curtain and said to Gu Jiao, "It's getting late. Go back to your room and rest." Gu Jiao said, "Oh." She took the bowl out, washed it, and went back to the east room. Xiao Lulang's mind kept flashing with images that he shouldn't have. It took him a lot of effort to calm down. He forced himself to study for an hour. He thought that he could clear his mind and reduce his desires. However, as soon as he put down the book, the thoughts that he shouldn't have had came back again. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/112237431. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 302. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. What's wrong with me? Although I've been restless before, I've quickly suppressed it. This time, this feeling of not being able to control himself made Xiao Lulang feel at a loss and even a bit irritated. Could it be that after reading so many sage books, in the end, he only became a beast? He shook his head and forced himself to get rid of these distracting thoughts from his mind. The effect was not satisfactory. It was as if the more he forced himself to suppress it, the more it was like boiling lava, burning his entire chest until it was boiling hot. In the end, he had no choice but to get up and go to the ancient well in the back courtyard to get a bucket of water and take a cold shower. Gu Jiao, on the other hand, was much more heartless. It was true that she teased him, and it was not false that she slept with him after teasing him. A certain person fell asleep with her head against the pillow. However, she was destined to not sleep well. She had a dream again. She dreamed of Xiao Lulang, who was an official in the Hanlin Academy. Xiao Lulang was from a humble family, and had defeated Royal Prince, and to become the new top scorer. Many people were jealous and envious of him. The Hanlin Academy was also Imperial Tutor Zhuang's territory. It was easy to imagine his situation there. However, gold would always shine. No matter how his colleagues tried to suppress and ostracize Xiao Lulang still had a chance to display his intelligence. However, it was not in the Hanlin Academy, but in the Ministry of Justice. It turned out that there was a murder case in the Ministry of Justice. The murderer was caught by a passing Hanlin official and handed over to the Ministry of Justice. However, not long after, the murderer's family came to the Hanlin Academy and said that the Hanlin Academy had caught the wrong person. His father was not the murderer. That was a 9-year-old child. No one would believe a child's words. Only Xiao Lulang went to the Ministry of Justice. In the end, Xiao Lulang found that the child's father was not the murderer. Xiao Lulang helped the Ministry of Justice catch the real culprit, and was greatly appreciated by the Minister of Justice. Now that the matter had progressed to this point, Xiao Lulang seemed to be truly successful in his career, finally seeing the light of day. But who would have thought that on his way back from the Ministry of Justice, Xiao Lulang would be hit by a young Taoist nun who fell from a building. He was knocked out, and so was the little nun. In broad daylight, a man and a woman were lying on top of each other and fainted together. Those who didn't know what was going on all thought that something had happened between the two. At that time, Xiao Luleng was wearing the official uniform of the Hanlin Academy. The news quickly spread. Xiao Liulong's reputation was ruined, and his career as an official had come to an end. When Gu Jiao woke up, she sat on the bed and hugged the quilt with a toothache. Her husband was really good at going against the current. He was smart, but he was also unlucky. Being hit by someone on the street was about the same as winning the lottery in her previous life. How could something like that happen? It was actually quite easy to avoid it. She remembered that when Xiao Luleng was leaving the Ministry of Justice, he had been stopped by a Hanlin official surnamed Yang and scolded. If it weren't for that delay, Xiao Luleng could have perfectly avoided the disaster. Gu Jiao got up before the sun rose. Xiao Luleng also got up early in the past, but he never got up earlier than Gu Jiao. Today was an exception. He was fetching water from the back courtyard. First he fetched water from the ancient well, then he carried buckets back to the kitchen and poured them into the water jar. Looking at his sweaty appearance, it wasn't hard to guess that he had been working for a long time. "Why are you so early? You didn't sleep last night, did you?" Gu Jiao asked in a strange tone. He had too much energy and needed to do some physical work to burn it off. Otherwise, he would be too hot. Of course, Xiao Luleng didn't say this. He said seriously, "I slept. It was a little hot, so I got up early." It was quite hot, especially since the ancient people wore a lot of clothes. Gu Jiao felt that the capital was hotter than the countryside. She slept and her pajamas were soaked in sweat. She fetched water and went back to her room to take a bath. Listening to the sound of the water, Xiao Liulong's blood was boiling in his chest. He felt that he had wasted the whole morning. Little Jing Kong didn't go to school today. He practiced martial arts in the back courtyard for a while. After breakfast, he went to play with Zhao Xiaobao next door. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan were also on vacation. They slept in their room. Gu Jiao didn't tell Xiao Luleng what she saw in her dream. She went to the medical center as usual. Xiao Luleng went to the Hanlin Academy. As soon as he entered the main entrance, he saw many Hanlin officials standing in the open space in front of the hall. The atmosphere was so intense that he didn't know what they were discussing. He always had nothing to do with the crowd. He didn't plan to join them, so he went to his office. But before he took 2 steps, he saw Ning Ziyuan at the corner of the corridor waving at him. He thought about it and went over. Ning Ziyuan pulled him to the other side of the corridor and gossiped in a low voice. "Did you hear? Royal Prince and made a great contribution this morning." "Oh," Xiao Luleng answered perfunctorily. He wasn't interested. "Hiss," Ning Ziyuan gasped, "he's your opponent. Aren't you curious about what he did? You're the top scholar and he's the second. Logically, you should be faster than him. If he's faster, well, it's normal to be faster than you. You can't beat him in terms of family background." This was the truth. A poor student might not be able to reach the starting line of others, even if he worked hard for 8 to 10 years. Some people were born at the end of their lives. But Ning Ziyuan still wanted to say, "There was a murder on Beifang Street. It was reported in the middle of the night. The murderer was arrested this morning." "Royal Prince and arrested him?" Xiao Luleng asked. Ning Ziyuan said, "That's right. He was on duty. When he passed by the Ministry of Justice, he met his uncle, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice told him about it. Based on the bloodstains at the scene, he led his subordinates and arrested the murderer. He can't leave the Ministry of Justice now, so he asked someone to come to Hanlin Academy and ask for leave. He said he'll come back in the afternoon. Why do you think he's so powerful? Not only was he born into a good family, he was more outstanding and hardworking than ordinary people. How could ordinary people live like this?" The entire Hanlin Academy was shocked by Royal Prince An's case. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion outside the door. "You got the wrong person. My father is not the murderer. It's not him." It was a child's voice. Xiao Luleng looked in the direction of the voice. Ning Ziyuan said, "Let's go and have a look." He thought Xiao Luleng would refuse. After all, He wasn't the kind of person who liked to watch a show. Who knew that Xiao Lulang would actually follow? There was a commotion outside the door. A child dressed in cotton clothes, less than 10 years old, was thin and small, and his clothes were messy. Perhaps because he had been running all the way. He was sweating profusely and one of his shoes had fallen off. He tried to rush in, but was stopped by Kong Mu of Hanlin Academy. His eyes were red, but he held back his tears. Your Hanlin Academy has caught the wrong person. My father is not the murderer. He didn't kill anyone. He was a child after all. When he heard that a Hanlin official had helped solve the case, he thought that his father had been arrested and brought to Hanlin Academy. He screamed at the top of his lungs, but no one present believed him. Kong Mu was a little impatient. How would we know if your father is the murderer? Even if you want to make a scene, you should go to the Ministry of Justice. Hanlin Academy is not the place to hear cases. Where is the Ministry of Justice? I finally found Hanlin Academy. The child finally couldn't hold back and cried in despair. It was obvious that he couldn't walk anymore. The soles of his feet were covered in bloody blisters. The child of a murderer. Not many people really sympathized with him. Just as he was crying uncontrollably, a tall and slender figure came in front of him. I'll take you to the Ministry of Justice. His crying stopped abruptly. He raised his teary eyes and looked at the handsome face in disbelief. Really? Everyone looked at Xiao Lulang as if they were looking at an idiot. Helping the child of a murderer? Was he crazy? I'll take a leave of absence, Xiao Lulang said to Kong Mu. Kong Mu was probably shocked by his behavior, and didn't say a word. Xiao Lulang hired a carriage and took the child to the Ministry of Justice. The child's narrative ability was quite clear. Xiao Lulang learned from him that he had abdominal pain in the middle of the night. His father went out to find a doctor for him, but he didn't return for the whole night. The next day he heard that his father had been arrested as the murderer. His mother had fainted. Xiao Lulang asked, "Is there anyone else in the family?" He shook his head. "No. Sir, my father wouldn't kill anyone. He really wouldn't. Believe me." Xiao Lulang only believed in evidence. If his father really was the murderer, then he had to understand that the imperial court didn't wrongly accuse anyone. If his father wasn't the murderer, then the imperial court would give his father justice. Xiao Lulang took him to the Ministry of Justice. Seeing that it was a Hanlin official, the guard of the Ministry of Justice was very polite. He took Xiao Lulang to the side hall. There, Royal Prince was discussing the details of this case with his uncle, Assistant Minister Qin. Because the murderer wasn't willing to confess, they had to find more evidence to punish the murderer. "Sir Qin, someone from the Hanlin Academy is here," the guard reported outside the door. Assistant Minister Qin didn't understand. Why is someone from the Hanlin Academy here? Royal Prince shook his head. I don't know. He was also very confused. Come in, Assistant Minister Qin said. Xiao Lulang walked in with the child. It's you. Royal Prince's brows furrowed as his gaze fell on the child. Who is he? He's the suspect's son. He went to the Hanlin Academy, Xiao Lulang said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. Assistant Minister Qin had heard about the new top scorer. Seeing that he was leaning on a cane, he guessed the other's identity. It was this brat who stole his nephew's top scorer position? The child said. My father isn't the murderer. He didn't kill anyone. Who told you to bring him in? Hurry and take him out. Assistant Minister Qin shouted harshly. Seeing that Xiao Lulang didn't move, he said coldly, Someone come. A guard walked in and took the crying child out. Xiao Lulang looked at Royal Princeton. He didn't say a word, but Royal Princeton felt like there was a thorn in his back from his gaze. He sighed. It was already suspicious for him to appear on the street in the middle of the night. When Wu Yang found him following the bloodstains on the street, he was planning to bury the tools used to commit the crime. My father wasn't suspicious. My stomach hurts. He went out to get a doctor for me. You're the suspicious ones. You're wrongly accusing a good person. The child's stubborn roar came from the corridor outside the door. Can I go take a look? Xiao Lulang asked. Normally, the Hanlin Academy couldn't interfere with the Ministry of Justice's work. Royal Prince and was purely helping his uncle. However, since he was involved, it wasn't a big deal to let Xiao Lulang take a look. The corpse was placed in the Ministry of Justice's ice cellar. Xiao Lulang first went to take a look at the corpse, then went to see the child's father. That child's father is a butcher. Royal Prince and said to Xiao Lulang. It was as if he was telling Xiao Lulang that people who killed more often seem to have an easier time killing people. You've got the wrong person. The murderer isn't him, Xiao Lulang said. Assistant Minister Qin was so angry that he laughed. You think it's not him just because you say so? Xiao Lulang said. The wound is on the right lower abdomen of the deceased. The back of the knife is above and the blade is below. The tip of the knife is slightly tilted to the left of the back. This is an oblique stab wound. It's not easy to stab with the right hand at this angle. The murderer used his left hand to hold the knife, so his dominant hand is most likely his left hand. Royal Prince frowned. You're saying that he's left-handed? Xiao Lulang nodded. Royal Prince said, That butcher. Xiao Lulang said, I've tried. He's not left-handed. Royal Prince An's expression became serious. Assistant Minister Qin sneered. What nonsense are you talking about? How could the Royal Prince catch the wrong murderer? Assistant Minister Qin wasn't like this in the past. He was too confident in Royal Prince and felt that as long as it was sent by Royal Prince it couldn't be wrong. Are there any footprints at the scene? Xiao Lulang asked. Yes. Royal Prince handed the drawing that the artist drew from the scene to Xiao Lulang. One side of the footprints is deep and the other is shallow. He should be injured. The suspect's leg is also injured. Xiao Lulang looked at the drawing and said, This isn't an injury. He was born with a limp. The injured footprints are messy and have different depths. These footprints are very regular. Royal Prince was speechless. He wanted to ask how he knew. His gaze swept over the suspect's leg, and he instantly understood. There were no signs of fighting at the scene. It was more likely that the murderer was an acquaintance. Moreover, the murderer was a man about 5 feet tall. Assistant Minister Qin didn't believe it at first. However, even if he didn't believe it, there were others who believed it. Another assistant minister surnamed Ming brought the guards to find the murderer. According to the characteristics provided by Xiao Lulang, the murderer was arrested and brought to justice without any effort. Assistant Minister Ming's eyes were crooked from smiling. Oh my God, this was simply a merit that fell from the sky. Who would have thought that you could catch a fake murderer? He patted Assistant Minister Qin's shoulder and said with a smile, The one who makes the first move doesn't necessarily have the upper hand, right? Assistant Minister Qin's mouth was about to fly off. Assistant Minister Ming went to the Minister of Justice to ask for credit. Of course, he didn't forget to bring Xiao Lulang along. The Minister of Justice was very surprised. How do you know all this? Hanlin Academy wouldn't teach this, right? Xiao Lulang paused and said, My eldest brother was a coroner. In order to support his mother and young Xiao Lulang, Brother Xiao gave up the opportunity to study and became a coroner. The Minister of Justice suddenly understood. He had heard about the background of this new top scorer. He heard that he came from a poor family. However, he didn't expect that he had a brother who was a coroner. The Minister of Justice asked, Your brother is now, Xiao Lulang said in a low voice, he passed away. Ah, the Minister of Justice didn't have a good impression of Hanlin Academy officials. Perhaps it was because he didn't enter Hanlin Academy in the beginning, so he said that grapes were sour. However, he felt that Xiao Lulang was different from those Hanlin Academy officials who thought they were a cut above the rest. He accidentally chatted with Xiao Lulang until late at night. When Xiao Lulang came out of the Ministry of Justice, it was already noon. It was around the same time as Gu Jiao predicted. On the other side, the news that Royal Prince had caught the wrong person had already spread to Hanlin Academy. Assistant Minister Yang angrily rushed to the Ministry of Justice. What was wrong with Xiao Lulang? Did he think that he was arrogant just because he was a little smart? He actually dared to undermine Royal Prince. Did he still want to work in Hanlin Academy? Why didn't he secretly suggest a plan to Royal Prince and slap Royal Prince's face in public? Assistant Minister Yang was furious. The carriage was parked in a small alley near the Ministry of Justice. As soon as Assistant Minister Yang jumped off the carriage, He was put in a gunny sack by someone. It wasn't too far from the Ministry of Justice to Hanlon Academy. The reason why he hired a carriage in the morning was because the child couldn't walk. Now Xiao Lulang planned to walk back. He took a shortcut. When he walked through the secluded alley, he had a feeling that something was going to happen. He looked back but didn't see anything. Strange. He suddenly had the illusion that he had survived a disaster. In a stable near the Ministry of Justice, Assistant Minister Yang was being beaten up by a gunny sack. Help! Ow! Help! Ow ow ow! Ow! You bullied my husband, hee hee hee. Gu Jiao's small fists landed on his body like snowflakes. Assistant Minister Yang was beaten up to the point of doubting life. No one would believe that he had been beaten up by someone outside the Ministry of Justice's main gate. Gu Jiao was so excited from beating him up that she only remembered the important matter after a long time. She forgot that there was a little Taoist nun to save. It wouldn't be good if she fell to her death. In her dream, she didn't fall to her death because Xiao Lulang acted as a cushion for her. Now there was no human cushion. Humph! Gu Jiao kicked Assistant Minister Yang, took back her gunny sack, and ran towards the alley where the little Taoist nun fell. Unfortunately, she was a step too late. The little Taoist nun had already slipped and fallen from the third-floor window. Gu Chongqing had just come out of the barracks when he saw his little sister sneaking around the Ministry of Justice. He was curious about what the little girl was doing, so he urged his horse to go over. Halfway there, a loud noise came from above. A small figure broke through the window and fell from above. Gu Chongqing's eyes moved. He flew up and caught the little girl in midair, then slowly landed back on his horse. The little Taoist nun looked at him in shock. Her eyes lit up. General Talisman? Her head tilted and she fainted. Digression. Tell me, did you write General Talisman based on Gu Chongqing's appearance? Old Chancellor. Cough. As long as I don't admit it, I won't. Little Taoist nun. Today is the day I bumped into a real person .. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1122210010. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 303. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. When the little nun opened her eyes again, she was already lying on a bed in the clinic. She froze for a moment, then remembered that she had just fallen down the stairs. She might have fallen to her death. The little nun closed her eyes. Since she was already dead, she might as well sleep. No. Suddenly, a proud young man's voice came from outside. Then a deep and magnetic voice said, "Then let's ride a horse? Do you want to ride a horse?" What kind of beautiful voice was this? And what kind of spoiling tone was this? The little nun was so engrossed in her novel that she threw off the quilt, got out of bed, and opened the window. She saw a well-built man in dark light armor. His hair was as black as ink, and his thick eyebrows were slanted to his temples. His facial features were deep and stern, and his temperament was cold. His eyes were filled with endless tenderness and love. This was the General Fu from the novels. She looked at the young man opposite the General Fu. He wore a light blue robe, and his body was thin. His cheeks were pale and sickly, but his features were exquisite and as handsome as jade. Most importantly, his temper was especially stinky, especially black-hearted. The sickly hostage, Prince Li Yenting. Didn't she say they were a good match? The scene was so beautiful. The little nun looked at the two people under the tree and swallowed her saliva. Creak. The door was pushed open. Dr. Song came in with a bowl of medicine. Miss, you're awake? Shoo, don't be noisy. The little nun stared at the two people in the courtyard. Dr. Song strangely walked forward and followed her gaze. He smiled and said, "So it's the two young masters, Gu. Miss, do you want to thank them?" The little nun frowned and looked at him. Dr. Song thought she didn't hear him clearly, so he repeated his words with a pleasant expression. "Miss, do you want to thank them?" The first sentence. The little nun said, Dr. Song thought for a moment, then said with uncertainty, "So it's the two young masters, Gu? They're brothers?" "Yes." "Biological?" "Yes." "Oh." The little nun lowered her head. Dr. Song's face was inexplicable. "Why are you so disappointed all of a sudden?" Dr. Song checked the little nun's pulse and let her drink the medicine. After asking Dr. Song, the little Taoist nun learned that she was saved by the heir of Marquis Dingen Manor, Gu Changqing. Gu Changqing and the little Taoist nun had met once before, but the little Taoist nun hadn't taken a good look at him. Sister. Soon after Dr. Song went out, Yuan Tong came in a hurry. "Sister, are you all right? I just went to buy a box of osmanthus cakes." "How did you disappear?" "I'm dying of anxiety. Fortunately, someone came to deliver a letter, saying that you came to the medical center next to the girls' school. The letter was sent by Gu Changqing. Gu Changqing only recognized her after saving her. It wasn't that Gu Changqing didn't take a good look at her face last time. It was just that it would be difficult to find a second Taoist nun like her in the entire capital." The little Taoist nun sat down on a chair by the window. "I'm fine. I just tripped and fell down from upstairs." "How did you suddenly fall down from upstairs?" Yuan Tong looked at the little Taoist nun. She pinched her face, then her arms and legs to make sure she was fine. The little Taoist nun said, "The room was too stuffy. I wanted to open the window to get some fresh air, but my foot suddenly slipped and I fell out of the window." Yuan Tong indignantly said, "It must be because they didn't clean the floor properly, causing sister to slip. I'll go find that tea shop later." The little Taoist nun shook her head. "Forget it. It was my own carelessness." Yuan Tong wanted to ask her sister who brought her to the medical center, but she was suddenly interrupted by a hateful voice. "Yuan Tong!" Yuan Tong clenched her fingers and coldly looked out the window. Gu Chengfeng stood outside the window with his arms crossed. "Oh, it really is you?" Yuan Tong gritted her teeth. "Bumblebee?" Gu Chengfeng asked. "What are you doing here?" Yuan Tong chuckled. "Why do you care what I'm doing here?" Gu Chengfeng. "Are you sick?" Yuan Tong. "You have medicine." Teach. Gu Chengfeng rolled his eyes in disdain. "I'm just asking if you're sick so I can introduce you to a reliable doctor." "Chengfeng, don't be rude." Gu Changqing was startled by the quarrel. The little Taoist nun stood up and slowly bowed to Gu Changqing. "Many thanks for saving my sister, Master Gu." Gu Chengfeng looked at Yuan Tong proudly. "Did you see that? My big brother saved your sister." Yuan Tong's words were stuck in her throat. She glared at Gu Chengfeng. Childish. The little Taoist nun was fine. After resting for a while, she paid the consultation fee and left with her sister. Gu Yan wouldn't talk to the Gu brothers, so he returned to Gu Jiao's courtyard. Gu Chengfeng habitually walked towards Gu Jiao's courtyard, but Gu Yan blocked the door. "This is my sister's courtyard." Gu Chengfeng snorted. "So what if you have a sister?" Gu Yan. "Of course you do. If you have the ability, you can have a sister too." He didn't have a sister. He would never have one in this lifetime. At most he had forget it. That girl wasn't even the Gu family's daughter. In another room, Gu Changqing and Gu Jiao talked about the recent news. "The assassin who set me up at the military camp that night should still be in the capital. Tang Ming is also investigating the whereabouts of that power." Tang Ming and Gu Changqing had a common enemy, so they temporarily abandoned their opposing positions and worked together to investigate the truth of that power. In the end, they really did find some clues. Immortal Music House. Gu Changqing said. "That person is related to Immortal Music House." "What's Immortal Music House?" Gu Jiao had never heard of it. Gu Chongqing hesitated, but still said, "It's a brothel." Oh. Gu Jiao was very calm. She didn't have the bashful reaction of a normal girl when hearing about a brothel. It's definitely not possible to investigate openly. It's easy to alert the enemy and make a secret investigation. Gu Chongqing didn't set foot in that kind of place, but if it was necessary to solve a case, he couldn't care less. Gu Jiao understood and asked, "Is it hard to enter a secret investigation?" Gu Chongqing, "Do you know who's behind Immortal Music House?" Gu Jiao. Gu Chongqing, the Empress Dowager. Gu Jiao's brows wrinkled. Great Aunt? Gu Chongqing nodded. Gu Jiao shook her head. Great Aunt would not harm the Tang family, nor would she assassinate Tang Ming. She would also not provoke discord between the Marquis Ding and Fu and the Marshals Fu at this time. Gu Chongqing was deep in thought. That's where the problem lies. Originally, the Marquis Ding and Fu and the Marshals Fu belonged to different camps. There was no need to provoke them, unless that person felt there was a need to provoke them. Jiao Jiao. Gu Chongqing looked at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao also looked at him. Gu Chongqing sternly said, although the matter of you inventing the bellows and mortar was not announced to the public, there were still people who knew it was you. You received the Emperor's appreciation and you also received the Empress Dowager's protection. Gu Jiao thought for a bit. So that person felt that the two of them would make peace because of me? This idea was simply too naive. Even if Gu Jiao did not deliberately inquire, she knew that her great-aunt and the emperor had already fought over 100 rounds in the palace. Although Gu Chongqing knew that his sister was highly regarded by the two, he did not believe that they would let go of their many years of enmity. More importantly, your relationship with the emperor and the Empress Dowager is not known by the common people. Even in the palace, there are not many people who know. Gu Jiao said, but that person knew. Gu Chongqing said, that's right. Gu Jiao picked up a tea leaf. There was a traitor by Great Aunt's side. Gu Chongqing analyzed. The Empress Dowager's leprosy in the past should also be related to this person. Although it was the emperor who did it, the success must have been due to this person's help. So I was thinking that the power behind Immortal Music House was not the Empress Dowager, but it was someone that the Empress Dowager was willing to protect. Gu Jiao's gaze turned cold. It was also someone who betrayed Great Aunt. The news that Xiao Lulang solved a case for the Ministry of Justice quickly reached the emperor's ears. The emperor was busy dealing with Empress Dowager Zhuang these days, and forgot that he had a new top scorer in the Hanlin Academy. Working for Imperial Tutor Zhuang, he must have been bullied a lot. The emperor suddenly felt ashamed. How could he have forgotten the person he promoted? Fortunately, that child was sturdy enough and was not abused to death by Imperial Tutor Zhuang. The emperor reached out to make it easier for a palace maid to dress him. Eunuch Wei. Eunuch Wei said, "This servant is here." The emperor said, "Is it the Hanlin Academy's turn to give a lecture to the Crown Prince today?" Eunuch Wei smiled. "Yes, is it still inviting Scholar Han? Your Majesty should go to the morning court first. This servant will send someone to invite him." The emperor said, "No, call Xiao Lulang over." Eunuch Wei was shocked. "Your Majesty, Xiao Lulang is only a scholar." To give a lecture to the Crown Prince, it was usually the highest-ranking official of the Hanlin Academy who personally appeared. At the very least, it would be a lecturer or a reading attendant. How could they let a new scholar take the stage? Then it will be him. The emperor had made up his mind. Eunuch Wei could only brace himself. Yes. Digression. Good morning. Are there any more monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/112207246. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. ZHHBQG. Come. Chapter 304. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. The princes of the imperial palace of an appropriate age had to go to the study every day to study. The study was located in a side hall of the throne room. In the country of Zhao, only third-rank officials and above had the right to go to the throne room for morning court. Therefore, teaching the princes was the only opportunity for officials below third rank to set foot in the throne room. But they still couldn't enter from the front door. Xiao Lulang was led by Eunuch Wei to the throne room from the side. They walked through the corridor and arrived outside the study. The other princes have already finished their homework. You will be teaching the crown prince alone. Eunuch Wei reminded him. The princes and the crown prince had classes together. The teachers were all highly respected officials. The difference was that the crown prince had more work to do than the other princes. After the princes finished their classes, he still had to continue. The crown prince had classes with the teachers in the morning. In the afternoon, he had classes with the emperor. He was occasionally sent out for training. The only prince who didn't need to attend classes was the eldest son, Ning Wang. When Xiao Lulang arrived outside the upper study, he coincidentally bumped into the princes coming out. The third prince, Rui Wang, had a sickly complexion. It was clear that he was having a hard time in class. The fourth prince was distinguished and elegant, light and indifferent. It looked like he knew everything. The fifth and sixth princes had serious expressions. It was unknown if the homework was too difficult or something else. Xiao Lulang bowed slightly. He didn't look sideways. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Eunuch Wei bowed to the princes. Rui Wang stopped and asked, "Eunuch Wei, who is this?" Eunuch Wei smiled and said, "Replying to your highness Rui Wang, this is Xiao Xiuzhua from the Hanlin Academy. Today he will be teaching the crown prince." So young. Rui Wang's eyes widened. He didn't say his rank was so low. In comparison, his rank was nothing. This teacher looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old. He was already teaching the crown prince? And he looked so familiar. Rui Wang stared at Xiao Lulang's face. Xiao Lulang calmly let him look. After all, Rui Wang was not the crown prince and was not close to the young Marquis of Zhaodu for a while. He could not see that Xiao Lulang resembled him. "Third brother, are we leaving or not? Didn't you say you were going to bring me and fourth brother to your residence to play?" The sixth prince urged. Coming. Rui Wang didn't think about Xiao Lulang anymore and left in a hurry. "Xiao Xiuzhua, please." Eunuch Wei gestured. Xiao Lulang stepped inside. His younger brothers had all finished their lessons, and he was the only one who stayed behind to continue learning. The crown prince was already somewhat unhappy, and when he saw that the Hanlin official giving the lecture was actually Xiao Lulang, his entire being felt unwell. "Why are you here?" He almost stood up in shock. Xiao Lulang calmly cupped his hands and said, "This humble subject is here to lecture the crown prince on the orders of His Majesty." "You are lecturing me? What was Imperial Father thinking? Why would he send this guy to lecture him? Did he already have no place in Imperial Father's heart? What kind of knowledge could a brat who was still wet behind the ears have?" The crown prince's face turned green and white. It was truly wonderful. On the other side, Gu Jiao also entered the palace. She had come to visit her great-aunt. She had the Rensho Palace token that her great-aunt had given her, so she smoothly entered the palace. When she walked past the throne room, she didn't know that Xiao Lulang was inside. She just unconsciously glanced in the direction of the throne room. The throne room was too grand. It stood towering above 100 steps of stairs, and stood loftily under the bright sky. It was grand and imposing, and the heavy aura of history assaulted the face. It was solemn and dignified, and it caused others to be unable to help but feel reverence in their hearts. The throne room was a place that every official of the Zhao country dreamed of. Only by entering the throne room could one truly be called an important official of the court. To get to Rensho Palace, one had to pass through the Imperial Garden. Gu Jiao had just walked there when she was stopped by a familiar and gentle voice. "Older sister." It was Gu Jinyu. Gu Jinyu walked briskly towards Gu Jiao. She asked in surprise, "Older sister also entered the palace? Did you come to visit Imperial concubine Shu?" Gu Jiao looked at her coolly. Gu Jinyu was used to Gu Jiao's indifference. She smiled and didn't take it to heart. She explained, "Imperial concubine Shu is ill. Grandmother heard the news and couldn't eat or sleep well. So she had me enter the palace to visit Imperial concubine Shu on her behalf." Gu Jiao and Gu Jinyu had not interacted much, but she remembered that she used to call old Madame Gu's daughter, Gu Gu Gu. Seeming to sense the change in her attitude, Gu Jinyu lowered her head and smiled bitterly. "Older sister probably doesn't know. Not only did I falsely claim credit for the bellows, I also almost stole older sister's glutinous rice mortar. I told Imperial concubine Shu that I had an even better invention. In the end, it was exposed and caused Imperial concubine Shu to be embarrassed in front of His Majesty. I heard that I also implicated the fifth prince. Right now, Imperial concubine Shu probably doesn't want to see me at all." Gu Jiao had no intention of chatting with her and didn't respond. Gu Jinyu said, "Older sister is going to see Imperial concubine Shu. Why don't you come with me?" Gu Jiao was about to say that she wasn't here to see Imperial concubine Shu, but before she could speak, she was interrupted by a youth's stern shout. "You're that wild girl from the countryside." Gu Jinyu's expression changed slightly. She turned and bowed to a youth in embroidered robes. "Greetings to His Highness the Fifth Prince." The fifth prince was 17 this year. He was the same age as Gu Qinglin, but 2 months younger. He had inherited Imperial concubine Shu's beauty, and was considered outstanding among the princes who were already very good-looking. However, his domineering and arrogant attitude did not please Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao didn't even lift her eyelids. She only glanced at him carelessly. The fifth prince stood in front of the two and looked at her in surprise. "What's with your attitude? Why aren't you bowing when you see me?" Logically speaking, she was supposed to kneel and pay her respects. However, since they were relatives, she was allowed to do a curtsy. Gu Jinyu reminded Gu Jiao in a small voice, "Older sister." Gu Jiao was indifferent. The fifth prince's anger flared. "You're very bold." Gu Jinyu quickly stepped forward and said softly, "Fifth prince, older sister has just entered the palace and is not familiar with the palace rules. I will properly explain it to older sister later. Fifth prince, please forgive older sister this once for the sake of grandfather and eldest brother." When the old duke and Gu Chongqing were mentioned, the fifth prince's expression softened. No matter how insensible he was, he understood that his maternal grandfather and eldest cousin brother were his backers. On the surface, his maternal grandfather had resigned, but he was secretly working for Imperial father. His eldest cousin brother must have had some accomplishments in the military camp. However, the fifth prince still had no intention of letting Gu Jiao off so quickly. He said coldly to Gu Jiao, "Were you behind what happened last time?" Gu Jiao looked at him strangely, completely unable to understand what he was saying. The fifth prince scoffed. "You're too much. Since you could invent those things, why didn't you tell my imperial mother in advance? You caused so many misunderstandings. Even my homework was questioned by imperial father. It's all your fault." What kind of tyrannical bandit logic was this? What did she know and what she didn't know? What right did she have to tell consort Shu, who had nothing to do with her? Gu Jiao crossed her arms and looked at the fifth prince like he was an idiot. Gu Jinyu quickly mediated. "Fifth prince, it's not older sister's fault. Older sister already told me. I didn't tell imperial mother." Gu Jiao also didn't deliberately tell Gu Jinyu. Gu Jinyu's words were clearly pushing the blame onto himself. But the fifth prince didn't buy it. "Don't speak for her. I've always heard about her. She clearly returned to the capital, but she didn't move back to the manor, and didn't come to pay respects to my imperial mother. Older sister is married. How can a married daughter move back to her maiden home? As for paying respects to imperial mother, isn't she here now?" Gu Jinyu continued to give Gu Jiao meaningful looks, indicating for Gu Jiao to give in. Gu Jiao remained indifferent. The fifth prince's hair stood on end again. "See, she has no sincerity at all. She clearly doesn't care about Imperial Mother and me. The fifth prince had been sullen recently. First he was grounded by the emperor. Then he was ordered to study hard. No one was allowed to help him with his homework. His teachers were also much stricter with him. He didn't have any fun at all. Today, everyone had agreed to go to Third Brother's manor, but he had to stay in the palace because he hadn't finished his punishment report from Imperial Father. He more or less wanted to vent his anger on Gu Jiao. If it was Gu Jinyu, perhaps she would let him have his way. But Gu Jiao wouldn't let him have his way. Gu Jiao looked at him and said, "I'm not here to visit Imperial concubine Shu, and I'm not here to pay respects to you." Saying this, she tilted her head slightly, indicating for the fifth prince to move aside. The fifth prince had only been a little angry at her, but now he was completely enraged. "I treat you as a relative and only ask you to pay respects to me. But you don't want face when I give it to you." The fifth prince said coldly, "Kneel." Gu Jinyu's face paled. "Your Highness, move aside. Otherwise I'll punish you too." The fifth prince rarely spoke so harshly to Gu Jinyu. It could be seen that he was truly angry. Gu Jinyu didn't dare to make another sound. Gu Jiao frowned in annoyance. "I'll say it one last time. Move aside." The fifth prince said angrily, "You're shameless. Come slap her." Two strong eunuchs walked forward and reached out to grab Gu Jiao. But they didn't even touch Gu Jiao's clothes before they were thrown onto the grass. The fifth prince was so angry that he stomped his feet. "How dare you commit a crime in the palace?" He raised his hand to grab Gu Jiao. "So noisy." She had such a bad temper. Coincidentally, there was a water tank with water lilies nearby. Gu Jiao grabbed the fifth prince's collar and threw him into the water tank. "Ah!" the fifth prince screamed. He fell into the water tank while sitting and was soaked. His hands quickly grabbed the sides of the tank, and he struggled out of the water tank with a big water lily. The huge commotion shocked Empress Xiao, who was passing by. It was a sunny day today. Empress Xiao was supposed to accompany Qin Chuyu to the Imperial Garden to play, but Qin Chuyu ran away after a while. She was strolling around leisurely. Hearing the commotion, she walked over and saw the fifth prince sitting in the water tank in a sorry state. He wanted to climb out but couldn't. Although the fifth prince looked a little sorry, he was really funny. The fifth prince was very handsome, and with a pink lotus flower on his head, it really made people unable to restrain their laughter. Ahem! Empress Xiao cleared her throat and covered her mouth with a handkerchief. She ordered the servants. "What are you waiting for? Go and help the fifth prince up." Yes. Eunuch Su personally led the servants and pulled the wet fifth prince out of the water tank. It was summer. Being soaked in water didn't make one feel cold, but it was ugly. The fifth prince's face looked even worse. The servants didn't dare to laugh at him. They held it in. Empress Xiao walked over slowly. She glanced around and asked, "What happened?" "Greetings, mother." The fifth prince bowed sullenly. Gu Jinyu also bowed. "Greetings, Empress. May the Empress have good fortune and peace." Empress Xiao's eyes fell on Gu Jiao, who was beside Gu Jinyu. "Which palace is she from?" Gu Jinyu hurriedly said, "Empress, she is my elder sister." "Your elder sister?" Empress Xiao had never seen Gu Jiao, but she had heard of her. But sometimes people's brains short-circuited. She couldn't remember Gu Jiao's elder sister. Besides, Gu Jiao's appearance was really unsightly. Empress Xiao frowned and withdrew her gaze from Gu Jiao. "What happened?" Empress Xiao asked the fifth prince. The fifth prince glanced at Gu Jiao. He didn't intend to tell on her, but he couldn't stop the eunuch from gossiping. A eunuch got up from the ground and knelt down in front of Empress Xiao. "Empress, this girl is so bold. She dared to attack the fifth prince in the palace. If you hadn't arrived in time, the fifth prince would have been killed by her." Empress Xiao's expression turned cold. How could she assassinate a prince in the palace? "Empress." Gu Jinyu knelt down and risked his life to plead. "There was just a misunderstanding between the fifth prince and my sister. She didn't want to kill the fifth prince. Your Majesty, please understand." "Oh, the Imperial Garden is so lively today." Noble Consort Zhuang's faint voice came from the entrance. She was followed by Consort Yu. Consort Yu was Rui Wang's biological mother. They had always been close. This was the first time noble consort Zhuang came out to the garden after Princess Ning's miscarriage. She didn't expect to encounter such a wonderful thing. Noble consort Zhuang bowed slightly to the Empress. Consort Yu bowed. Greetings, Empress. The fifth prince bowed embarrassedly. Noble consort Zhuang, noble consort Yu. Noble consort Zhuang seemed to be in a good mood today. When she spoke, she smiled slightly. What's wrong with the fifth prince? Did he go for a swim because it's too hot? Why is there a flower on his head? Flower? The fifth prince's expression changed, and he quickly raised his hand to take off the water lily on his head. Thinking that he, a prince of a country, had a flower on his head in front of so many people, he was ashamed and resentful. He couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Empress Xiao looked at Gu Jiao and sighed. The fifth prince had a little disagreement with this girl. I'm investigating this matter. Noble consort Zhuang smiled and looked at Gu Jinyu and Gu Jiao beside her. So the fifth prince was pushed into the water by her? Since such a big thing has happened, it's better to call consort Shu here. After all, the fifth prince is her son. Empress Xiao nodded. Call consort Shu here. Yes. Eunuch Su went to Changqun Palace to report to consort Shu. Knowing that her son was pushed into the water, consort Shu ignored her illness and went to the imperial garden under the hot sun. Empress Xiao couldn't remember who Gu Jinyu's sister was, but how could consort Shu not? She had a red birthmark on her face and was too ugly to be seen. Who else could it be but her niece who was raised in the countryside? She held the fifth prince's hand with heartache and turned to glare at Gu Jiao fiercely. Did you push the fifth prince into the water? I think you're going against the heavens. Empress Xiao said. Consort Shu, the matter hasn't been clarified yet. Miss Gu and this eunuch each have their own story. Let's listen to what the fifth prince and this girl have to say. Consort Shu gritted her teeth and said, I only asked the Empress, did she push the fifth prince into the water? The eunuch beside the fifth prince cried, Your Majesty, it's her. She hit the servants and pushed the fifth prince into the water. Consort Shu trembled with anger. She clenched her fists and said to Empress Xiao with her last trace of reason, Your Majesty, this person is my niece. Please hand her over to me. Empress Xiao asked, What are you going to do? Consort Shu looked at Gu Jiao coldly and said, She has no mother to raise her. Of course, I will discipline her on behalf of my brother and sister-in-law. Guards, take her down. As soon as she finished speaking, Eunuch Qin's voice sounded from afar. The Empress Dowager is here. Empress Xiao and the other concubines hurriedly turned around and bowed respectfully. Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix carriage came to the imperial garden like a golden phoenix flapping its wings. Her momentum instantly shocked everyone. The imperial garden was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Empress Xiao, as the head of the concubines, had to speak boldly. Mother, why are you here? If I didn't come, I wouldn't know that all of you are so good at making trouble for me. I invited a doctor from outside the palace, but he was blocked by you on the way. You wanted to kill him. What? I just came back to the palace, and you want me to be well. The only thing she didn't say was that they stopped the Empress Dowager from practicing medicine, and wanted to kill the Empress Dowager. Mother, please forgive us. Empress Xiao knelt down with the help of the palace maids. Since the Empress knelt, noble consort Zhuang, and the others could only follow suit and kneel on the ground. Come here. Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently. She said this to Gu Jiao. Empress Dowager Zhuang still wanted to put on airs in front of outsiders. What she meant was to let Gu Jiao walk to the side of the phoenix carriage. And then she would continue to be a trembling empress who would bring disaster to the country. Who knew that Gu Jiao would misunderstand? She supported herself with one hand, got on the phoenix carriage, and sat very obediently next to her grandaunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang. Everyone. Empress Dowager Zhuang. Oh, I've spoiled her. I have to spoil her even if she collapses. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www ZHHBQG. com/89642_896422826/11218272. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 305. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found online here. Of course, Empress Dowager Zhuang's image wouldn't collapse so easily. After all, she was still very unreasonable to others. Consort Shu was about to speak up for the fifth prince when Empress Dowager Zhuang glared at her coldly. Consort Shu's face turned pale with fright. Empress Dowager Zhuang came quickly and left quickly. In the blink of an eye, the phoenix carriage was already far away. Although the fifth prince was indeed wronged, who had the courage to snatch him from Empress Dowager Zhuang? Empress Dowager is too biased. Why don't you ask what happened to the fifth prince? Consort Shu felt wronged. Empress Xiao glanced at her coldly. Consort Shu, be careful with your words. Consort Shu realized that she had misspoken and hurriedly bowed. I know I was wrong. Noble Consort Zhuang suddenly asked Consort Shu, does your niece know medicine? Consort Shu was speechless. How did she know? She had never seen that girl. Gu Jinyu said softly. In reply to your highness the imperial consort, elder sister knows medicine. During the incident at the Ministry of Works, many critically ill patients were sent to elder sister's clinic. You still have the face to talk about the accident at the Ministry of Works. Consort Shu was furious at Gu Jinyu. Consort Shu had been favored in the palace for many years. If Gu Jinyu hadn't cheated her, she would still be His Majesty's favorite concubine. Empress Xiao and noble Consort Zhuang both knew the inside story. They disdained Consort Shu's behavior, but they didn't say anything. Noble Consort Zhuang said to Empress Xiao, since the Empress Dowager summoned the doctor, she must be sick. I'll go to Renshou Palace to see the Empress Dowager. Empress Xiao nodded slowly. Okay, I still have some things to deal with, so I won't go now. I'll pay respects to my mother later. Noble Consort Zhuang smiled, bowed slightly, and turned to leave. The moment she turned around, the smile on her face faded. No matter how high her status was or how much the Empress Dowager valued her, she couldn't call her mother. Empress Xiao continued to look for Qin Shiyu. After taking a few steps, an idea flashed through her mind. Eunuch Su, that girl, couldn't be the one who invented the bellows and glutinous rice mortar, right? It's her. Eunuch Su nodded. Empress Xiao broke into a cold sweat for herself. His Majesty thought highly of that girl. Fortunately, he didn't have time to punish her. But then again, how did that girl become Empress Dowager Zhuang's guest? She seemed to be very familiar with Empress Dowager Zhuang. It seemed that this was not the first day they had met. Does His Majesty know about this? On the other side, Empress Dowager Zhuang and Gu Jiao returned to Renshou Palace. Eunuch Qin went to the small kitchen and instructed the cook to make Gu Jiao's favorite snacks. Empress Dowager Zhuang brought her back to her bedroom and sat down on a bench. Tell me, how did you find time to visit me today? Gu Jiao sat down beside her and thought for a moment before saying, I miss Grandaunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. I don't believe it. Gu Jiao curved her lips and took out a food box from the small basket. After opening it, the aroma of crispy sesame oil and brown sugar rushed to her nose. It's still hot. Gu Jiao took out the steaming brown sugar glutinous rice cake. The brown sugar glutinous rice cake was fried black and sprinkled with freshly fried white sesame seeds. The color was attractive and the aroma was rich. Empress Dowager Zhuang's mouth watered. Gu Jiao put a small yellow duck bowl in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the tableware in Little Jing Kong and was speechless. Why did they use such childish tableware? Are there no bowls at home? She asked with a dark face. Gu Jiao said, today Uncle Zhou and Aunt Lu are holding banquets at the same time. There aren't enough bowls, so they were borrowed. The cupboard was empty. Only the strange tableware in Little Jing Kong was not borrowed. These tableware were all made by Gu Jiao in the way he liked. However, he had a little problem of liking the new and disliking the old. As long as Gu Jiao made new ones, he would not want the old ones. He was now obsessed with kitten bowls and did not use the small yellow duck bowl. Empress Dowager Zhuang. So you not only gave me the tableware that the little monk used, but also the tableware that he did not want. Aijia's heart is bitter. Aijia will not say it. The temptation of the brown sugar glutinous rice cake was huge. Although she disliked the small yellow duck bowl, Empress Dowager Zhuang still enjoyed the food Gu Jiao brought. She only ate 3 before Gu Jiao did not allow her to eat anymore. There are 3 more. Empress Dowager Zhuang said with grievance. Those are for eunuch Qin. Gu Jiao said. Empress Dowager Zhuang. Oh, anyway, Qin Kuan's food will be mine later. Gu Jiao. I will bring them to eunuch Qin and watch him eat. Empress Dowager Zhuang. When noble consort Zhuang arrived at Renshou Palace, the brown sugar glutinous rice cake episode was over. Gu Jiao was taking Empress Dowager Zhuang's pulse. The two were sitting in chairs. The sun shone through the window, shining on Empress Dowager Zhuang's silver hair, and on the young girl's black hair. The scene was somewhat peaceful and beautiful. Noble consort Zhuang was stunned. She thought she might be seeing things. For a moment, she actually saw a trace of kindness in her aunt's eyes. The most unkind person in the world was her aunt. The emotions in Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes had been restrained, leaving only a domineering and majestic face. What are you doing here? Noble consort Zhuang smiled. Didn't Aunt invite a doctor from the common people? I came to see Aunt. After all, she was her niece. Empress Dowager Zhuang was not bad to noble consort Zhuang. Otherwise, she would not have come in so quickly. Even the Empress had to wait outside for a while when she came to pay respects. Empress Dowager Zhuang said, Aijia is fine. I just asked someone to check your pulse. I see. Then I am relieved. Noble consort Zhuang said and sat down on a stool slightly below Empress Dowager Zhuang. Gu Jiao sat next to Empress Dowager Zhuang and took her pulse. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't restrict Gu Jiao with the rules of the palace, so Gu Jiao didn't know that this bench was Empress Dowager Zhuang's special seat. Ordinary people were not qualified to sit on it. When the imperial doctors took Empress Dowager Zhuang's pulse, they all knelt on the ground. Noble consort Zhuang naturally didn't know that Gu Jiao had even slept on Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix bed. She slept horizontally, slept on her stomach, slept with drool, and slept in all kinds of ways. Gu Jiao finished taking Empress Dowager Zhuang's hand and gently put it back. I said Aijia is fine, right? Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. She didn't really call her to Renshou Palace to be a doctor. Gu Jiao said, you are not allowed to eat candy secretly. Empress Dowager Zhuang choked. Aijia, when did Aijia eat candy secretly? Is it Qin Kuan, that dog? Halfway through her words, she realized that noble consort Zhuang was still here. She changed the topic and said coldly, Aijia doesn't eat candy. Only children eat things. Oh, then it seems that you don't need to give this. Gu Jiao took out the candied fruit from her pocket and silently put it back. Empress Dowager Zhuang. Not allowed to go back. Noble consort Zhuang. In fact, Empress Dowager Zhuang was still very arrogant. This didn't change much before or after returning to the palace, whether it was her grandaunt or Empress Dowager Zhuang. Even when she spoke to Gu Jiao, her tone wasn't very good. But when she liked someone, she couldn't hide it. When she looked at that person, there would be light in her eyes. The last time noble consort Zhuang saw her aunt like someone so much was when Princess Ning was in the palace. Although Princess Ning wasn't her aunt's biological daughter, she was more like her own flesh and blood. Her aunt almost doted on her. Unfortunately for a man, Princess Ning ignored Empress Dowager Zhuang's dissuasion and married far away to the bitter cold of the northern border. Her aunt once told her that if she dared to walk out of this door, she would cut off all ties with her. His aunt had the power to overturn the imperial court. She could control the universe and play with the world in the palm of her hand. However, she could not control the marriage of her daughter. Because she cared too much, she had a weakness. When Princess Ning and threatened her with death, her aunt still lost. Noble consort Zhuang would never forget the night many years ago when Princess Ning, and wearing a bright red wedding dress, kowtowed 3 times with tears in her eyes outside the silent Rensho Palace in the cold wind and snow. Ken is unfilial. I can't serve Imperial Mother. I can't take care of Imperial Mother for the rest of my life. Imperial Mother, please take care of yourself. Ken, bye-bye. Princess Ning and got married. Her aunt fell ill. She almost lost her life. After that, his aunt cut off the last trace of humanity and turned into a demon empress who could bring calamity to the country through and through. After Consort Shu brought the 5th prince back to Changchun Palace, she felt that something was wrong. She called Gu Jinyu over. Why didn't you mention that girl's medical skills before? Gu Jinyu lowered her eyes and said, Your Highness didn't ask. Imperial concubine Shu gasped. Consort Shu frowned and asked, When did she know the Empress Dowager? Gu Jinyu shook her head. I don't know. You don't know anything. What use are you? Consort Shu couldn't get anything out of Gu Jinyu and impatiently let her go. The more Consort Shu thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Wasn't that girl one of His Majesty's people? She had His Majesty's appreciation, so why was she so close to the Empress Dowager? Could it be that she sought refuge with the Empress Dowager? Consort Shu suddenly sneered. Very good. She was worried about how to deal with this girl. She was really giving her a pillow. Come, Your Highness. A palace maid walked over. Where is His Majesty? Consort Shu asked. In the imperial study. The palace maid replied. Consort Shu raised her eyebrows. Prepare a sedan. I want to go to the imperial study. She wanted to put righteousness before family and expose this girl to His Majesty. Digression. I just want to laugh 3 times. Haha. Then ask for monthly votes. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/112179314. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 306. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. In the study, the Crown Prince was having his last class of the day. Xiao Liulong's class was actually very good. He explained the profound in simple terms and quoted from many sources. It was not boring at all. It was more lively and easy to understand than Scholar Han's lecture. This was not to say that Scholar Han's literary foundation was not as good as Xiao Liulong's. It was just that Xiao Lulang had a few troublemakers at home who tutored them. Whenever it was a bit boring, the 3 of them would collectively go into a trance. But when the Crown Prince looked at Xiao Liulong's face, he could not help but think of the deceased Xiao Heng. He was always in a trance. Your Highness, please explain what you just said. Xiao Lulang interrupted the Crown Prince's trance for the 27th time. The Crown Prince was stunned. Xiao Lulang repeated. The Crown Prince was stunned. He was thinking about Xiao Heng just now. How could he have heard what he said? Xiao Lulang put down his book on the podium and said, If the Crown Prince does not understand, I will explain it again. The Crown Prince felt a headache coming on. It was already lunchtime, but because he was always in a trance, he did not finish the content. If it were another civil official, the class would have already ended. They did not dare to delay the Crown Prince's class. But Xiao Lulang was very stubborn and insisted on finishing the class. The Crown Prince braced himself and listened again. After listening carefully, he learned a lot. At least he could immediately repeat the explanation. Xiao Lulang tested him on the key points of today's lesson. The Crown Prince thought that he did not understand, but unexpectedly he answered all of them. He was surprised. When did he understand? Wasn't his mind on Xiao Heng during this class? Xiao Lulang said neither too fast nor too slow. Today's class ends here. Your Highness, please write down the homework. There's still homework? The Crown Prince frowned as he looked at him. How daring! His hair wasn't even fully grown yet, and he was only here to substitute for a lesson. Did he really think that he was the Crown Prince's teacher? In any case, the Crown Prince was the legitimate son of the Emperor and the future monarch. He had the right to be proud and arrogant. He looked down on Xiao Lulang, this little cripple from a humble family. Of course, it was also possible that the complicated feelings he had for Xiao Heng were causing trouble in his heart, causing him to project part of his feelings toward Xiao Heng onto Xiao Lulang. Does he love Xiao Heng? Naturally, it was painful. He had so many brothers and sisters in the palace, but before little Qi was born, he didn't have any real siblings. They all wanted his position. On the surface, they flattered him, but behind his back, they envied him and cursed him. The only person he treated as a younger brother was Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng was so outstanding. Even though he was 5 years younger than him, he studied better than him, recited better poems than him, and even had better looks than him. But he thought that this was his cousin and would be his subject in the future. It was also a good thing that he was outstanding. He had never been jealous of him until he met Wen Linlang. That year he was 13, and Wen Linlang was 11. He was just a young and inexperienced boy who didn't understand the love between men and women. But inexplicably, at first glance, he felt that Wen Linlang was the crown princess he would marry in the future. His mother often called the daughters of the ministers into the palace to accompany her, but he didn't like any of them. If he had to have someone accompany him on the road to the emperor, he hoped that that person would be Wen Linlang. What's your name? Sister Linlang. The 8-year-old Xiao Heng ran over with a childish face. He tilted his little head and looked at Wen Linlang, then looked at him. Brother Crown Prince, you're here? Let me introduce you. This is Sister Linlang. Sister Linlang, this is Cousin Crown Prince. Greetings, Your Highness. She quickly knelt down and bowed. After that, she held Xiao Heng's hand and left. While walking, she wiped away the sweat on Xiao Heng's forehead. He heard her gently advise him. Heng, don't climb trees in the future. It's very dangerous. But I want to pick fruit for you to eat. Don't you like to eat it? But I prefer Heng to be well. I don't want Heng to get hurt. Oh. He returned to the palace and told his imperial concubine mother that he liked Heng's sister Linlang. However, his imperial concubine mother very seriously told him. She is Heng's fiancée. She saved Heng's life. The marriage was set a long time ago. You are the older brother. You cannot steal your younger brother's marriage. Your Highness, Your Highness. Xiao Liulang's voice interrupted the Crown Prince's thoughts. The Crown Prince was so shocked that he began to sweat. He guiltily glanced at Xiao Lulang. This was too frightening. This person was too similar to Xiao Heng. What was Father Emperor thinking? To have him give him lessons, was he not afraid that he would have nightmares? The Crown Prince calmed himself down and maintained his good self-control. Suppressing his impatience and discomfort, he said in a normal tone, I did not remember the homework just now. I will have to trouble Xiao Xiuzhua to repeat it. Coming out of the study, the Crown Prince's entire body was soaked. The palace servant waiting outside immediately went forward and handed him a handkerchief while fanning him. Fortunately, it was currently summer, so sweating was not strange. Only the Crown Prince understood that the majority of the sweat on his body was cold sweat. Xiao Lulang calmly walked out of the study. The Crown Prince glanced at his walking stick. Xiao Heng was very vain and cared a lot about how others looked at him. When he was young, he had lost 2 front teeth, and he did not speak in front of others for half a year. He definitely would not allow himself to be disabled. With him, he would rather sit in a wheelchair than limp around in broad daylight. He was not Xiao Heng. He was not. On the other side, Imperial concubine Xu sat in a sedan chair and left Changchun Palace. The emperor was reading memorials in the study when he suddenly heard Eunuch Wei report. Your Majesty, Consort Shu is here. The Emperor frowned. Now. It was lunchtime. The Emperor glanced at Empress Xiao, who was silently waiting for him. He cleared his throat and said to Eunuch Wei, "Let Consort Shu in." Yes. Eunuch Wei walked out. Empress Xiao did not say anything. She silently sat on the chair across from the Emperor and sipped her tea. Qin Chuyu was rolling on the ground. He was practicing the toad fighting technique, which was what the three scumbags of the Imperial College saw in a novel. It was said that this technique was very powerful and could beat away many bad people after learning it. He was showing his skills to his father and telling him that he was someone who could protect him. The Emperor did not think that his son was practicing. He only thought that his son was too fat and should lose weight. Rolling on the ground was also a form of exercise, so he did not scold him. Consort Shu thought that the Emperor was the only one in the study. Unexpectedly, when she entered, the whole family of three was there. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Consort Shu suppressed her embarrassment and bowed to the two. Empress Xiao smiled. The Emperor said, "Little Qin Chuyu, who was rolling on the ground, turned his head and glanced at his father. Father? Then he saw Consort Shu. Ha! Consort Gu? He stood up and bowed to Consort Shu politely. Little Qi greets Consort Gu. Good boy, Consort Shu said with a smile. How could he roll on the ground like this? The Empress had learned all the rules. How could she teach her son like this? Consort Shu, do you need something? The Emperor asked. She did need something, but how could she say it in front of the Empress and the seventh prince? Eunuch Su, take little Qi out. Empress Xiao said. She was going to stay here by herself. Your Highness, I'll go outside to play marbles with you. Eunuch Su said with a smile. Qin Chuyu was obsessed with marbles, so he went with Eunuch Su. You can leave too, the Emperor said to the maids who were fanning him and Empress Xiao in the room. Yes. The maids walked out in a line. Eunuch Wei was guarding the door. Tell me what's the matter? The Emperor asked concisely. Consort Shu looked conflicted. Empress Xiao smiled. It seems that it's inconvenient for me to hear. Then I'll come to visit your Majesty another day. No. Consort Shu didn't have the guts to talk to His Majesty behind the Empress' back. It didn't matter if she didn't expose it, but it was against the rules if she said it out in the open. Consort Shu said with a smile. I'm not hiding anything from the Empress. I was just thinking about how to say it. When the Empress asked me, I was enlightened and knew where to start. Speaking of which, I need the Empress to testify for me. Empress Xiao picked up the teacup and gently stirred the tea with the lid. She said, What do you need me to testify for? Placing righteousness before family was a sign of loyalty in front of the Emperor, but in the ears of others, it sounded like a family scandal being aired in public. Of course, Consort Shu didn't want the Empress to see her as a joke, but the arrow had already been knocked. She could only bite the bullet and expose Gu Jiao. Chen Xie only found out today that the girl was acquainted with the Empress Dowager. Consort Shu did not take sides in the palace. She did not curry favor with Consort Zhuang, and did not rely on Empress Xiao. But there was one thing she was very careful about. That was she could not get too close to Empress Dowager Zhuang. She said this with the intention of removing herself from the picture. Of course, she did not forget to remove Marquis Ding and Fu from the picture. Ever since that girl came to the capital, not only did she not come to pay respects to me, she also did not return to the Fu to pay respects to her grandfather and grandmother. Her older brothers in the family are like strangers to her. So her collusion with the Empress Dowager could not have been incited by Marquis Ding and Fu. Empress Xiao had actually come to talk about this matter, but she was not as impatient as Consort Shu. She first wanted to see His Majesty's attitude towards the girl. She would not do something that was strenuous and unrewarding. It was just that there were too many people in the palace. Even if she didn't say it, the matter of the Imperial Garden would reach His Majesty's ears sooner or later. At most, it would be due to the fact that she did not report it. Empress Xiao was the mother of the country. She did not need any merit to sit firmly in the position of Empress. On the contrary, she could not make a mistake. Otherwise, she would implicate the Crown Prince. Empress Xiao did not expect that the first person to report to the emperor would be Consort Shu. That girl was Consort Shu's niece. That was true. She was not close to Consort Shu. Her invention of the bellows and glutinous rice mortar had received His Majesty's appreciation. But not only did Consort Shu not benefit from her glory, she had also been punished because of her. Today, the fifth prince had been pushed into the water by her. With the old and new grudges added together, it would be strange if Consort Shu did not want to tear that girl apart. Empress Xiao calmly drank her tea and did not make a single comment. The emperor's face sank. He looked towards Empress Xiao. Did the empress also see it? Empress Xiao put down her teacup and sighed, saying, Chunxia did see her follow the Empress Dowager to Rinshou Palace. I heard that the Empress Dowager was not feeling well, and invited a doctor from the common people. Once the doctor was invited, the emperor's expression relaxed. He knew the little miracle-working doctor's medical skills. The reputation of the Miracle Hall had gradually spread in the capital. It was not surprising that the Empress Dowager would invite him to the palace. Consort Shu hurriedly said, But how can a doctor from the common people sit in the Empress Dowager's phoenix carriage? Few princesses have sat in it. Empress Xiao smiled and did not speak anymore. The emperor knew Empress Dowager's character. She would never let a doctor who she had only met once or twice sit in her phoenix carriage. Consort Shu was right. Few princesses had sat in it. She was a heinous old woman. Did she bribe the little miracle-working doctor? The emperor said in a low voice. You go back to the palace first. I still have something to deal with. Consort Shu understood that the emperor was going to verify the truth of the matter. She was not afraid of the emperor's investigation. She was afraid that the emperor would not investigate. So many pairs of eyes had seen that girl and Empress Dowager were very close. At first glance, it was obvious that there was something fishy. At night, the emperor called eunuch He from the imperial household and ordered him to take people to investigate the relationship between Gu Jiao and Empress Dowager Zhuang. The relationship between Gu Jiao and Empress Dowager Zhuang was not difficult to investigate. No one had found it before because no one suspected them at all. Eunuch He carried a burden and pretended to be a peddler to Qingshui Alley. Then everything came to the surface. The candlelight in the imperial study swayed. The emperor's face was lit up and then dark. He clenched his fists and said, What did you say? She saved Empress Dowager Zhuang? Yes, Empress Dowager Zhuang is her and Xiao Xiuzuo's grandaunt. Xiao Xiuzhuo went to the capital to take the exam. They also followed him from the countryside. But Eunuch He paused. He did not know if he should say that Empress Dowager Zhuang's behavior in Qingshui Alley seemed to be different from that in the palace. If he had not confirmed the characteristics and the portrait, he almost thought that the grandaunt Jiao Jiao in the neighborhood was a real old lady from the countryside. After all, Empress Dowager Zhuang was a person who never suffered losses. Eunuch He continued. I also inquired about the time when Empress Dowager Zhuang went to their house. It was not long after Empress Dowager Zhuang disappeared from Leprosy Mountain. Our people lost track of Empress Dowager Zhuang in Qingchuan Town. They are also from Qingchuan Town. The emperor fell into the chair dejectedly. His face was full of disbelief and hurt. So before she met me, she met Empress Dowager Zhuang. Eunuch He sighed. I'm afraid so. The emperor said again. Was she the one who cured Empress Dowager Zhuang's leprosy? Eunuch He said. I don't know. But I'm afraid so. The emperor laughed self-mockingly. His eyes were full of pain. She can even cure venereal disease. Why can't she cure leprosy? I should have expected it. In the world, except for her, who can cure Empress Dowager Zhuang's leprosy. I just don't want to guess it was her. Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei looked at the emperor's almost crazy expression and felt worried. The emperor's eyes turned red. His feelings for Gu Jiao were very special. It was definitely not the love between a man and a woman, but it was also not a normal doctor-patient relationship. This little girl carried too many expectations of him. He was grateful to her, appreciated her, valued her, and even cherished her. When he saw her, he would be happy. But he never expected. that she was actually the Empress Dowager's person. People's standpoints and perspectives were different. They had different prejudices, so they would see things from different angles. In the same way, Gu Jiao and her husband saved Empress Dowager Zhuang and took her in. In Grand Tutor Zhuang's eyes, Xiao Lulang had turned to the emperor and knew that the other party was the Empress Dowager. All the redemption and shelter were just to put the Empress Dowager under house arrest. But in the emperor's eyes, it was Empress Dowager Zhuang who deliberately hid her identity and used the image of an innocent old woman to cheat Gu Jiao and her husband's sympathy and trust. She also used Xiao Lulang to go to the capital for the imperial examination as an opportunity to return to the capital. She is so despicable that she can use an imperial examination candidate. She is so shameless that she can scheme against her own savior. She is a vicious woman who will do anything. The emperor could tolerate other things, but he couldn't tolerate this. The emperor's eyes were like torches. Why did everyone around me betray me? The little magic doctor did it, and so did Ning'an. What was wrong with me? How did I lose to her? Eunuch Wei and Eunuch He didn't say anything. They understood that the emperor was thinking of Princess Ning'an again. Princess Ning'an was the daughter of concubine Jing. The emperor had been raised by concubine Jing since he was a child, so he had a close relationship with Princess Ning'an. The two grew up together. The Empress Dowager had a good relationship with concubine Jing's children in the early years. Otherwise, she wouldn't have supported concubine Jing's adopted son to the throne. But the emperor was dissatisfied with Empress Dowager Zhuang's regency after he ascended the throne, so he distanced himself from Empress Dowager Zhuang. In the end, they broke off their relationship. Between the emperor and Empress Dowager Zhuang, Princess Ning'an chose Empress Dowager Zhuang. It wasn't that she had framed the emperor for Empress Dowager Zhuang, but that her protection of Empress Dowager Zhuang made the emperor feel bitterly disappointed. In the end, Princess Ning'an married to the northern frontier for her sweetheart, causing Empress Dowager Zhuang to fall seriously ill and almost die. The emperor felt a faint twisted pleasure in his heart. You took Ning'an away from me back then, and now she is taken away by someone else. Have you tasted the pain that I suffered back then? The emperor was so depressed that he felt like he couldn't breathe in the palace. He decided to take a walk outside the palace. He changed his clothes and went to Marquis Xuanping's estate with Eunuch Wei. He wanted to have a drink with Marquis Xuanping, but the Marquis went to the soft jade pavilion. The emperor then secretly went to find the old Marquis, but the old Marquis wasn't at home either. The emperor was confused. Did these two people make an appointment to anger him today? The emperor misunderstood the old Marquis. The old Marquis didn't know that the emperor had left the palace and went to the martial arts center. Gu Jiao also went to the martial arts center. Gu Jiao had lost to someone a while ago. After hearing the news, the old Marquis came to watch Gu Jiao fight. Gu Jiao's opponent was still a young swordsman from last time. Her opponent was about 27 or 28 years old, and was at the peak of his strength. On the other hand, Gu Jiao was still young, so she was inferior to her opponent in terms of strength. Of course, the most important thing was the moves. Gu Jiao learned how to kill people in the organization, but she couldn't kill people in the martial arts center. The old Marquis saw the problem after watching half a round. Best of 3, Gu Jiao lost the first round. The old Marquis called Gu Jiao to the backyard. Little brother Gu, use the moves you used on him to attack me again. After saying that, the old Marquis imitated the swordsman's moves on the spot. Every move was exactly the same. Gu Jiao exclaimed in her heart. Was the old man so powerful? He could learn it with just one look? Gu Jiao went to attack the old Marquis, but she lost even more miserably than in the arena. The old Marquis said, "Your moves are very messy. You're using fist moves and palm moves on the spot. Where did you learn from?" Gu Jiao took out a small notebook and wrote, "No master, I fought blindly." The old Marquis's mouth twitched. She could fight blindly like this. The old Marquis thought for a while, then demonstrated and said, "If you want to use fist moves, you can use these moves. If you want to use palm moves." With his guidance, Gu Jiao won 2 rounds in a row after entering the arena and clinching victory in this competition. The old Marquis was very satisfied. This child's talent was really too high. She was not inferior to Gu Changqing at all. Gu Jiao won the fight. She touched the small mask and looked up at the old marquis. The old marquis went downstairs and called her to the armory of the martial arts center. He said to her, "You've never used a weapon. Actually, you're at a disadvantage. I originally thought that you didn't like to use weapons." Now she knew that he didn't know how to use weapons at all. Gu Jiao thought, "I'm very good at shooting, the kind that can explode the head with one shot." The old marquis looked at the weapons in the room and said, "Pick one." Gu Jiao didn't have much interest in cold weapons. The old marquis thought that she didn't know how to pick, so he looked carefully and picked up a red tasseled spear. He said to her, "Use this." Gu Jiao nodded. "Okay." The old marquis demonstrated a set of spear moves for her. The old marquis still restrained his aura, but Gu Jiao still felt an earth-shattering power. This is an expert, a real expert. "You try." The old marquis stopped and threw the red tasseled spear to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao caught it. In her previous life, she had too little contact with cold weapons. Other than daggers, there were only scalpels. Suddenly giving her a red tasseled spear, she was a little stunned. She made a mistake on the first move. If it was Gu Changqing or any of the old marquis' soldiers, the old marquis would have already lashed out with his whip. But with little brother Gu, the old marquis seemed to be especially patient. He himself didn't know why. When Gu Jiao made a mistake for the 7th time, the old marquis's temper couldn't be controlled anymore. Gu Jiao looked at him cutely, her eyes full of innocence. The old marquis, forget it, forget it. She's still young. I'll teach her slowly. I'll show you one last time. Watch carefully. If you make a mistake again, I won't teach you anymore." After the 18th demonstration. This is really the last time. The old marquis was about to collapse. This child was here to torture him. Why did she learn so quickly barehanded? But she couldn't even play with a red tasseled spear. Just as the old marquis was about to vomit blood, Gu Jiao finally demonstrated a complete set of spear moves. The old marquis was paralyzed on the ground, only feeling that he was about to collapse. Who was the one training who? Why did he have to take the extra step of teaching this kid martial arts? He had almost lost his life from the training. Let's stop here today. His arms and legs were about to break, and his old waist was also sprained. Gu Jiao hadn't played enough. She had tasted the sweetness. But seeing that he really was about to collapse, she felt a twinge of conscience, and decided not to squeeze the old man dry. She took out a small notebook and scribbled. "Then let's practice again next time?" The old marquis's temples suddenly throbbed. "Next time? There's a next time?" The old marquis's face was full of rejection. Gu Jiao thought for a while, then took out 2 small jade-like fingers and gently pinched his sleeves. Under the mask, the pair of watery phoenix eyes looked at him very innocently. The old marquis gave a vague Gu Jiao shook her little head happily. The old marquis looked at the little head shaking in front of him, and inexplicably wanted to spit. Of course he restrained himself, because he felt that it was wrong to hurt his brother. This scene was seen by Gu Qingfeng, who was tailing Gu Jiao. Others might not recognize Gu Jiao, but how could he not? He was the one who introduced Gu Jiao to the martial arts center. Moreover, he had long been in cahoots with the masked Gu Jiao many times. Speaking of which, his grandfather actually liked this kind of thing? With his grandfather's bad temper, he thought that the girl would be beaten into a pile of fertilizer. Gu Qingfeng was tailing Gu Jiao because he found some information about Immortal Music House. He planned to sell the information to this girl. He also didn't want to extort her. The price of affection was 1,000 taels. But who would have thought that this girl would actually play with his grandfather for so long? Today probably wouldn't work out. Forget it, it's the same to find her another day. Gu Qingfeng returned to the marquis's residence. Not long after, the old marquis also returned. He was very tired. Teaching Gu Changqing wasn't so tiring, because Gu Changqing could be beaten up as he pleased. That brat, he couldn't do it. In the end he suffered internal injuries. Grandfather. Gu Qingfeng suddenly walked out from the corridor. The old marquis was startled. Seeing that it was Gu Qingfeng, his eyes turned cold. "Why are you hiding here in the middle of the night instead of sleeping?" After seeing the other side of his grandfather, Gu Qingfeng didn't seem to be as afraid of him as before. He smiled and said, "Grandfather didn't come back so late. I was worried about you, so I waited here for you." The old Marquis looked at Gu Qingfeng suspiciously. Gu Qingfeng immediately revealed a smile. "Grandfather, can you lend me your Nirvana Phoenix for 2 days?" The Nirvana Phoenix was the old Marquis's mount. It was even more powerful than Gu Changqing's horse. Gu Qingfeng had been eyeing it for a long time, but never had a chance to ride it. The old Marquis loved horses as much as his life. Riding a horse was like riding him. The old Marquis ignored Gu Qingfeng and strode towards the courtyard. Gu Qingfeng took out the killing move he learned from Gu Jiao. He stretched out 2 fingers and gently pinched the old Marquis's sleeve. The old Marquis turned around. He looked at the old Marquis and began to shamelessly act cute. The old Marquis gave him a big slap in the face. Gu Qingfeng was directly sent flying and crashed into a pillar. He stuck to it for a long time before slipping to the ground. Gu Qingfeng. What went wrong? Why was he always the one getting hurt? The same small action, Gu Jiao did it softly and cutely. When Gu Qingfeng did it, the old Marquis felt that he was a sissy. The old Marquis got goosebumps. Before he could react, his hand had already reached out. Gu Qingfeng couldn't take care of himself for the rest of the night from this slap. He was especially miserable, and had to be carried back by the servants. After Gu Jiao came out of the martial arts center, she saw that it was already so late and decided to go straight home. She took a shortcut, so it was inevitable that it was a bit remote. When she passed by a quiet and deserted street, she suddenly heard the sound of metal clashing, followed by a familiar voice. "You dog! How dare you block my way?" It was Eunuch Wei's voice. Gu Jiao's eyes turned cold. She turned around and stepped on the wall to the roof, then jumped down from the roof to another street. The distance was a bit far. Gu Jiao sped up, but when she arrived at the scene, Eunuch Wei was already lying in a pool of blood. "Eunuch Wei." Gu Jiao walked forward and took gauze and hemostatic powder from her arms to stop the bleeding. Eunuch Wei grabbed her wrist with his blood-stained hand. "No, don't worry about me. Go and save His Majesty." Gu Jiao wrapped the gauze around the wound on his abdomen. "Wait for me." Gu Jiao followed the direction Eunuch Wei pointed and caught up with the emperor who was being surrounded. The emperor was also injured. The last secret guard was stabbed in the heart in order to cover his escape. Seeing that a man in black was about to take his head, a red tasseled spear suddenly came with a whistling sound. It pierced the man's shoulder and nailed him to the wall. If Gu Jiao was just having fun in the martial arts club, then at this moment, she really felt the power of the red tasseled spear. Blood splashed on the emperor's face. The emperor fell to the ground, and his whole person was stunned. Gu Jiao grabbed the emperor. "Let's go." When another wave of men in black arrived, the emperor was no longer in the alley. Gu Jiao first hid the emperor in a cowshed, then turned around to look for Eunuch Wei. Unfortunately, she couldn't find him. The emperor was injured. If the other party wanted to investigate, they would start from the medical center. With that thought in mind, Gu Jiao brought him back to Jade Water Alley. She couldn't go to her son-in-law's house, nor could she go to Xiao Liulong's house. Little Jing Kong was already asleep. After thinking about it, there was only one room in the house that was empty. Gu Jiao helped the emperor to her great-aunt's house. "What's wrong, Jiao Jiao?" Yao Shi heard the commotion and came out. Gu Jiao put the emperor on the bed and said to Yao Shi, "Nothing, just a patient." "Do you need help?" Yao Shi asked. "Boil some water," Gu Jiao said. "Okay." Yao Shi went to the kitchen. Madam, let me do it." Yuya, put down the half-washed clothes and said to Yao Shi, "Go to the house and rest. I will boil the water." Yao Shi nodded and looked at the house with some worry. Gu Jiao had already closed the door. The emperor's wound was not in a good place. It was above his thigh, and he almost lost his melon. Gu Jiao lit all the candles, and used the night pearl that her great-aunt gave to Gu Yan. She opened the small medicine box and began to cut the melon for the emperor. No, perform the surgery. Digression. There is a book review activity in the Q Point Circle of Readers. Everyone can participate. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/112154414. HTML Genius memorized this website's address. www.zhbqg.com Bikago mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 307. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated faster. Millions of novels can be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. When the emperor saw Gu Jiao holding the scissors and sharpening the knife, his expression changed. I don't want it. He had to take it even if he didn't want it. With a click, the emperor's pants were cut open and the bloody cloth was torn off by Gu Jiao from his wound. The emperor only felt a chill between his legs and endless embarrassment rose from the bottom of his heart. The embarrassment even overshadowed the pain of the wound, making him feel ashamed and angry. The emperor was very weak due to the loss of blood and couldn't resist. He bit his lips, and every strand of hair on his body silently expressed his refusal. Gu Jiao, I can't see it. The emperor gritted his teeth. You. Gu Jiao put down the scissors, changed into a clean pair of gloves, and took out the infusion bottle and the intravenous needle from the small medicine box. The moment the emperor saw the cold gleam of the needle, the fear of being injected surged from the bottom of his heart and spread to his limbs and bones. He panicked. I don't want to be injected. Be good. You'll get better after the injection. Gu Jiao pinched his hand and inserted the needle into the back of his hand without pressing the pulse tube. She was getting more and more skilled. The emperor looked at the cold thing on the back of his hand and was so scared that his whole body trembled. Being cut by a knife was not as scary as being cut by it. He struggled. Gu Jiao said with a straight face, Don't move. If you miss the needle, I'll give you a second injection. I'm serious, I'm super fierce. The emperor suppressed the urge to struggle and turned his face away with grievance, not looking at the needle in his hand. In the past, Gu Jiao gave the emperor intramuscular injections. This was the first time she gave him an intravenous drip. In order to prevent him from moving around and missing the needle, Gu Jiao took a small wooden board that was only used for injections for little Jing Kong. Gu Jiao tied the small wooden board under the emperor's hand and fixed it with a bandage. After that, Gu Jiao took out a razor. The emperor's expression changed again. You still want to shave my hair? Gu Jiao said. Just a little will do. The emperor's face turned red. Don't touch my red crown crane. Gu Jiao said seriously. It's leg hair. There were also some superficial wounds on the outside of his tibia. The wound was a little deep and needed to be sutured. Of course, the biggest wound was at the base of the leg, but there was no need to shave it. But even shaving his legs was not much better. His legs had been injured by hidden weapons, and there were more than 10 wounds of various sizes. Most of them were not deep, and most of them did not even require stitches. However, they still needed to be disinfected and applied medicine. The emperor was placed in all sorts of embarrassing positions so that Gu Jiao could easily clean his wounds, disinfect his wounds, administer local anesthesia, stitch him up, and apply medicine on him. It was too dark for Gu Jiao to see clearly. She said softly, Spread your legs. The emperor was speechless. He was too ashamed to face anyone. Woo, this is too shameful. After Gu Jiao finished the operation on the emperor had already fainted. It was unknown whether he fainted because of excessive blood loss or because of shame. Gu Jiao tidied up the room and walked out with the medicine box. Seeing Gu Jiao come out, Xiao Lulang walked forward and stepped on the steps under the corridor. He took the medicine box from her hand and said, Mother said that there was an injured person in the house. Xiao Lulang had already been waiting in the courtyard for a while. He had just gone to Lin Qingye's house. When he came back, he saw the bloodstains on the ground. He also saw Yaoshe anxiously walking back and forth in the courtyard. After asking, he found out that Gu Jiao had brought back an injured person. The injury seemed to be quite serious. Gu Jiao had been in there for almost an hour. Xiao Lulang had Yaoshe go to rest. He waited outside for Gu Jiao. Xiao Lulang called Yaoshe mother. Gu Jiao was her biological daughter. She could not call her that if she had a knot in her heart. Xiao Lulang was her son-in-law. If he did not call her that, Yaoshe would feel that he was an outsider. Gu Jiao had already accepted Yaoshe in her heart. Thus, when Xiao Lulang called Yaoshe mother, it was quite pleasing to her ears. It was just that she was a little embarrassed to say it. It was as if she called her that, the bond between them would not be severed. She still needed time. She had to completely walk out of the shadow of her previous life. Gu Jiao understood that Xiao Lulang was curious as to why he did not send the injured person to the medical center. Instead, he directly brought him home and lived in his great-aunt's room. It had to be known that that was the Empress Dowager's room. Normal people could not live there. Gu Jiao turned around and gently pushed open the door. A pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak blinked as she looked at him. Xiao Lulang walked into the room and used the light from the oil lamp to see the other person's face clearly. His Majesty? He was astonished. He encountered an assassination? No wonder he didn't send him to the medical center. It was very dangerous to send him to the medical center in this kind of situation. The emperor had already fallen asleep and his injuries had been treated. However, it was not hard to see what kind of danger he had experienced from his pale face. Xiao Lulang closed the door for the emperor and looked at Gu Jiao. Are you all right? The emperor had encountered an assassination, and she had coincidentally picked him up. It was hard to not worry if she had also encountered a wave of danger. Why did she use the word picked up? It was mainly because Gu Jiao liked to pick up people at home too much. She had picked up an Empress Dowager by accident. Then she had picked up a little monk by accident. Then she had picked up an old chancellor of the Imperial College by accident. All right, the old chancellor wasn't picked up by her. It was her great-aunt who picked him up. Gu Jiao wanted to say that she was fine. However, when the words were at the tip of her tongue, she rolled her eyes and stretched out her small hand. My hand hurts a little. What's wrong with your hand? Xiao Lulang subconsciously held her pair of white hands and carefully examined them from the palm to the back of the hand, from the web between the thumb and index finger to the fingertips. After he finished examining, he didn't see a trace of injury. He looked at her strangely. Sore. Gu Jiao explained without changing her expression. Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang was about to retract his hand when he suddenly heard Gu Jiao cry out in pain. One of her hands was held by him while the other hand was raised to cover her left eye, looking very uncomfortable. Xiao Lulang wasn't so easily fooled. He asked indifferently, What's wrong? Your eyes are sore too? Gu Jiao rubbed her eyes. Sand got into my eyes. Xiao Lulang didn't know if the sand really got into her eyes or if it was fake. However, he could see that she had rubbed her eyelids and cheeks red. He couldn't help but raise his hand and move her hand away. Let me take a look. His slender jade-like fingertips gently landed on her eyes while his thumb landed on her cinnabar birthmark. The birthmark didn't have any temperature, but his fingertips were inexplicably hot. Perhaps it was because the sand really got into her eyes. Her left eye was red and there was a glimmer of moist light flickering in it. The corner of her eye was also slightly red, giving off a trace of weakness as if she had just been bullied. It was extremely seductive. Xiao Liulang's throat moved and was a little dry and hoarse. He slowly lowered his head and got close to her eyes, blowing gently. Is there still sand? He asked softly. Gu Jiao blinked and felt for a moment. There's more. He lowered his head again as if he wanted to kiss her eyes. I didn't see anything. Young master, please continue. Yuya who had just finished cleaning up the kitchen, came out and saw the young master and her family's young miss playing kissing in the corridor. She was so scared that she quickly covered her eyes, turned around, ran back to the kitchen, and closed the door in one go. Xiao Lulang felt a wave of shame in his heart. They didn't do anything kissing, but they had to bear the name of kissing. It really was a grievance. Gu Jiao's eyes were fine. Xiao Lulang planned to send her back to her room, but he didn't know if it was because she had pulled too much when she was saving the emperor. But the pipa button on her chest had broken and her clothes had split open, revealing a white undergarment embroidered with pink lotuses. Xiao Lulang unconsciously swept his eyes over it before quickly looking away. However, that pink and tender little lotus tip was like a nail that was hammered into a certain person's mind and couldn't be removed. But it was clear that Gu Jiao didn't realize that one of her buttons had been undone. Xiao Lulang was about to remind her when Gu Xiaoshan and Gu Yin came back from outside. Ever since they had hidden guards, the two of them had been able to practice for a longer period of time, so they didn't have to worry about encountering any danger on the road. Brother-in-law? Gu Xiaoshan saw Xiao Lulang, and before his gaze could fall on Gu Jiao, Xiao Lulang moved to the side and firmly blocked Gu Jiao. He used his body to block Gu Jiao between himself and the wall. His hands were on either side of her, not leaving a single gap in his line of sight. This appearance was very much like a beast protecting its food. He turned around and said to the two of them in a deep voice, "You two enter the room first." The two who had never been treated so seriously by their brother-in-law, even though they were at the bottom of the class in the exam. Brother-in-law's eyes were so fierce. The two of them obediently entered the room. Gu Jiao blinked as she looked at Xiao Lulang, who was right in front of her. Her husband was pushing her against the wall. Xiao Lulang cleared his throat and pulled back the hand that was protecting her. He opened his mouth, but in the end he didn't remind her that her button was undone. Instead, he took off his outer robe and wrapped it around her body. "Go back to the room. It's cold at night." The emperor woke up in the middle of the night. The anesthetics effect had worn off, and he felt pain all over his body. Yu Ye was guarding his room. When she saw that he had woken up, she quickly went to call Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao said to Yu Ye, "You go rest. There's no need to guard the back." "Yes." Yu Ye returned to her room. Gu Jiao pushed open the door and entered. Yu Ye took very good care of the emperor. She didn't let him sweat or catch a cold. Everything was just right. "Help me up." The emperor wasn't used to speaking while lying down. Gu Jiao helped the emperor sit up and took a cushion for him to use as a backrest. The capital was hot during the day, but it was still a little cold at night. The emperor's original clothes couldn't be worn. His figure was similar to one of Gu Yan's secret guards. Gu Jiao took a new set of secret guard clothes for him to change into. Gu Jiao lit up the oil lamp. "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Are you hungry?" The emperor shook his head. His face was pale and haggard. "I'm fine. Where did Eunuch Wei go?" Gu Jiao said he was injured. "He asked me to go save him. Don't worry about him. When I went back to find him, he was already gone. I hope he escaped and wasn't caught by that group of people." The emperor closed his eyes. Eunuch Wei had been with him for more than 20 years. He was no longer an ordinary servant. Speaking of which, he was careless. He had been out of the palace a few times and hadn't been attacked. He thought it wouldn't be a big deal to bring a few less secret guards. Who knew that he would give the enemy an opportunity? "Why did you save me?" the emperor suddenly asked. Gu Jiao looked at him with a strange expression. The emperor felt a stabbing pain in his heart from this gaze. He turned his face and said weakly and dully, "Isn't letting me die what you want? Or do you think, if you save me again, you can trick me into trusting you again? I can tell you clearly, don't waste your time. I won't be fooled." Gu Jiao stared at him. The strange expression in her eyes gradually changed to surprise. In the end, the surprise faded and there was a trace of understanding. She didn't say anything. She didn't say a word to defend herself. She just silently stood up and put down a painkiller and a cup of warm water on the bedside table. Then she got up and left. Her movements when she opened and closed the door were very light, as if she didn't have a temper. However, that silent and lonely little figure made the emperor's heart ache. She clearly knew that it wasn't like this. He couldn't die, so she needed to trick him into trusting her. If she hadn't appeared, he would have already died under the knives of those assassins. Why did she need to trick him into trusting her? But he couldn't control the anger in his heart. Since Ningen left, he hadn't met anyone who could enter his heart for many years. As long as he thought that the little divine doctor who should have belonged to him had joined Empress Dowager Zhuang's camp, he couldn't help but feel angry. In fact, he also understood that he couldn't blame her. After all, she met Empress Dowager Zhuang first, and he was the one who met her later. But the words that came out of her mouth were so hurtful. Perhaps it was because of their closeness that her words hurt even more. This was also good. It was better to have a short pain than a long pain. Since she chose Empress Dowager Zhuang, then he and she were destined to break all ties. His life was really miserable. The people he cared about were all taken away by Empress Dowager Zhuang one by one. First Ningen, then the little divine doctor. He didn't know who would be next. But fortunately, he didn't care about anyone else. No, there was one more. This person would never betray him. He and Empress Dowager Zhuang had been enemies since the previous emperor was alive. He put Empress Dowager Zhuang into the cold palace, and Empress Dowager Zhuang exiled him beyond the Great Wall. Anyone could join Empress Dowager Zhuang's camp, but he wouldn't. Thinking of this, the emperor finally felt a little relieved. The emperor was seriously injured and couldn't return to the palace. Naturally, he didn't go to the morning court the next day. But the court wasn't chaotic at all, and there was no turmoil in the capital. The emperor wasn't surprised. After all, Empress Dowager Zhuang was there to listen to the government. She was like a stabilizing needle of the Zhao kingdom. With her, the emperor was dispensable. Thinking of this, the emperor hated Empress Dowager Zhuang even more. Little Jing Kong and others didn't know that there was a patient at home. The three of them went to school after eating. Xiao Lulang also went to the Hanlin Academy. Gu Jiao went to the medical center to get some calming medicine. Aunt Lu came to the house. She came to return the bowls. When she passed by the old lady's house, she heard some noise inside, and thought the old lady came back. She was so happy that she put a basket of bowls on the stone table and walked quickly. Aunt Hua, play the leaf card. But when she pushed the door open, it wasn't the old lady but a handsome middle-aged man. Although the emperor's appearance was not as good as Marquis Xianping, he was also a first-class handsome uncle. Aunt Lu's eyes were shining. The emperor's eyebrows twitched. You are Aunt Hua's son, right? The emperor frowned. You got the wrong person. He was the real emperor. How could he be the son of a common old lady? Aunt Lu said. Oh, I'm right. You look so much like Aunt Hua. You must be her son. Coincidentally, the old chancellor was on his way to the Imperial College, and passed by the door. Aunt Lu's sharp eyes stopped him. Uncle Hua, your son is here. My son? I have a son? The old chancellor was confused and walked over strangely. He pushed the door open and saw the emperor. The emperor also saw the old chancellor. They looked at each other, and the sky above their heads collapsed at the same time. Gu Jiao thought of the emperor's son-in-law when she was on her way to the medical hall to get the herbs. She already knew that her granduncle was the Imperial College's chancellor. She thought that she should remind the emperor's son-in-law not to come here for the next 2 days when she went back, so as not to expose herself in front of the emperor. Gu Jiao didn't know that as soon as she left, both of them fell off the horse. Gu Jiao met Jiang Shi when she went to the medical hall. Jiang Shi came to see little Jiang Li. Jiang Shi was discharged from the hospital last month. After the old chancellor took office in the Imperial College, he used his connections to get him and little Jiang Li a real household registration in the capital. The old chancellor also found a job for Jiang Shi in the Ministry of Works, to be a formal apprentice in the Ministry of Works. After the apprenticeship, he could become an official craftsman of the imperial court. But Jiang Shi rejected it. He worked as a coolie at the dock and occasionally carried some private goods on the ship. It was risky, but the profit was better than being an apprentice. Little Jiang Li stayed in the medical hall as a little medicine boy. He did odd jobs and learned how to identify herbs. When he was not busy, he learned how to read from shopkeeper Wang. Miss Gu. Jiang Shi greeted Gu Jiao respectfully. His life was given by Gu Jiao. The household registration was also done by Gu Jiao. More importantly, Gu Jiao took little Jiang Li in and gave him a shelter. Little Jiang Li didn't have to hide anymore. He could go out and do things without any worries. Gu Jiao nodded. You've become tanned. Jiangshi stayed in the hospital for so long that he was almost as white as Gu Yan, who knew that after being exposed to the sun at the dock, he immediately became tanned. Jiangshi smiled and scratched his head. Gu Jiao asked, "Can your body take it?" Jiangshi smiled and said, "I can take it. The medical hall is so good that I've become fat. I'm the fattest one among them." It was not easy for poor people to become fat these days. Being fat was something worth showing off. That's good. Gu Jiao chatted with Jiangshi for a while. She mainly asked about his physical condition and made sure that he was qualified to work at the dock. She didn't say anything else and asked him to go find little Jiangli. Gu Jiao brought the herbs back to Jadewater Alley. She found Auntie Lu standing at the door of her house, peeking her head out. She had a sneaky, curious, and slightly anxious look. Gu Jiao walked over. "Aunt Lu, what's wrong? What's the matter?" "Oh, it's Jiao Jiao. You scared me." Aunt Lu patted her chest. Originally, they heard Feng Lin and Lin Qingye call Gu Jiao Jiaonyang. But the old lady kept calling her Jiao Jiao, which sounded nice, so they followed suit. Aunt Lu whispered to Gu Jiao, "Your uncle came back and quarreled with your granduncle. They quarreled so fiercely. I heard a chair fall. Aya, your granduncle usually looks like such a refined person. Why is he so fierce when he's angry? I also heard him say, 'Kneel down.' Although he's his son, he's already so old. It's quite scary to kneel down so easily." The corner of Gu Jiao's mouth twitched. "Are you sure you said father, and not son, when kneeling down?" Aunt Lu's heart ached for that handsome young man. After being tormented by Uncle Hua, would he be sad, helpless and wronged? The old chancellor, who was tormented by the fury of thunder, was obediently kneeling on the ground. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The emperor was so angry that his whole body trembled. "How dare you? You're acting like my imperial father." "Huaxian, you're going to ascend to heaven." The old chancellor hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. Be careful of your wound." The emperor said angrily, "You still care about my wound? Aren't you just trying to anger me to death? Stop being pretentious in front of me." The emperor was simply sad to death, helpless to death, aggrieved to death. It was still acceptable for the little divine doctor to rely on Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang's methods were brilliant, but the little divine doctor was kept in the dark by that woman from the beginning to the end. He didn't know that she was a vicious woman. But Huaxian, this old thing, had interacted with Empress Dowager Zhuang all his life. How could he not know what kind of character Empress Dowager Zhuang was? How could he not know that the biggest cancer in the Dazhao kingdom was Empress Dowager Zhuang? How could he not know that he and Empress Dowager Zhuang were irreconcilable? "Your Majesty," the old chancellor wanted to explain, but he hesitated. He couldn't say that Zhuang Jins had lost her memory and mistook him for his wife. It wasn't that he couldn't convince the emperor, but he just didn't want to say that. He also didn't know why. The emperor said, "Do you know what kind of crime it is to blaspheme the Empress Dowager of a kingdom?" The old chancellor said, "According to the law, you should be punished." The emperor said, "Punished? I'll punish your 9 generations." The old chancellor suddenly calmed down. Perhaps he smelled the smell of death, so he wasn't so scared anymore. He kowtowed, knelt on the ground and said, "I'm an orphan. I have no father, mother, sisters or brothers. I'm all alone. I lost my wife when I was young and had no children in my life. Among my 9 generations, there's only me. You." The emperor was so angry that he took the medicine bowl on the bedside table and threw it over. The old chancellor didn't dodge. However, the emperor was seriously injured and didn't have enough strength. The medicine bowl only fell on the ground in front of the old chancellor. The emperor was even angrier. Gu Jiao came to the door. She didn't want to stand by and watch, so she raised her hand to push the door. Suddenly, a hand with traces of age gently clasped her wrist. She turned her head and was slightly stunned. "Great Aunt? Who else could it be if it wasn't Empress Dowager Zhuang who dressed up as an old lady?" "Great Aunt, why are you here?" Gu Jiao asked. Empress Dowager Zhuang said majestically, "Such a big thing happened. How can I not come?" She couldn't say that she came out to play cards. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, "You go outside and wait." I'll deal with it. Oh. Gu Jiao obediently went to sit on the stone bench in the yard. Empress Dowager Zhuang pushed the door and entered. The emperor's angry scolding stopped abruptly. The old chancellor, who was originally kneeling on the ground, also straightened his body. He knelt with integrity. Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at the old chancellor expressionlessly. You also go out. I have something to say to His Majesty. Yes, I will leave. The old chancellor didn't dare to look directly at Empress Dowager Zhuang's face. He lowered his eyes and bowed without looking sideways. Then he got up and went out. The emperor looked at the old lady who was dressed like a commoner in disbelief, and was speechless for a moment. He had never seen Empress Dowager Zhuang like this. Even if she was going to go out in plain clothes, she didn't have to dress so shabbily, right? He almost didn't dare to recognize it. Empress Dowager Zhuang's fierce and domineering eyes swept over him. Emperor, there's that smell. Your Empress Mother is still your Empress Mother. If Empress Dowager Zhuang wanted to shine, she could shine like the sun even if she wore a sack. Wherever she stood, her fierce aura filled the whole room. I escaped from Leprosy Mountain and fainted on the side of the road. After I was rescued and woke up, I didn't remember the past. My memory was messed up, and I recognized some people wrongly. Emperor, you don't have to hold on to those who don't dare to disobey me. This was the first time Empress Dowager Zhuang openly admitted that she had leprosy in front of the emperor, and that she had wandered among the commoners. In fact, it was something that they both knew, but the two of them had to show off their acting skills in the palace. The emperor also thought about letting him say it, but it was Empress Dowager Zhuang who broke the window paper first. The emperor laughed at himself. In terms of courage and boldness, he really couldn't compare with his Empress Mother. Empress Dowager Zhuang continued. Emperor, if you want to blame someone, blame yourself. If you didn't cause me to have leprosy, how could it have involved so many things later? Another layer of window paper was pierced through. The emperor clenched his fists in shame and embarrassment. What about Empress Mother? He sneered. Empress Mother didn't want to kill me. In the palace, he wouldn't call himself emperor in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang. He would call himself son. But did she think that she was the only one who would break the window paper? The emperor sneered again and again. Empress Mother left the palace early in the morning to confirm whether I was dead or not. Last night's assassination failed. Empress Mother, are you disappointed? Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't rush to answer his question. Instead, she asked, My leprosy has been cured. Are you disappointed? The emperor sneered. Of course I'm disappointed. Extremely disappointed. Empress Dowager Zhuang said. Then I'm the same. After she finished speaking, she went out expressionlessly. Sure enough, it was this poisonous woman who did it. The emperor was so angry that he punched the bedpost. Today Eunuch Qin also came. He accompanied Gu Jiao in the courtyard and waited. Eunuch Qin, sit. Gu Jiao patted the stone stool next to her and said. Eunuch Qin smiled. Thank you, Miss Gu. This old servant won't sit. Gu Jiao didn't make things difficult for him. She paused and asked him. Eunuch Qin, last night's assassination, was it really Grandaunt who did it? The two people's voices weren't loud, but they weren't soft either. Gu Jiao and Eunuch Qin both heard it. Eunuch Qin held the whisk inside. This old servant doesn't know everything, but it shouldn't be Empress Dowager. Why? Gu Jiao turned to look at Eunuch Qin and motioned for him to continue. Eunuch Qin hesitated for a moment, and decided to tell Gu Jiao. He sighed. Empress Dowager once promised Princess Ning'an that no matter what, she would always keep His Majesty alive. Empress Dowager may deal with His Majesty, suppress His Majesty, put His Majesty under house arrest, or even kill His Majesty, but she will never kill His Majesty. After the old chancellor was ordered to leave by Empress Dowager Zhuang, he didn't stay here and didn't hear the conversation between Gu Jiao and Eunuch Qin. However, he also believed that last night's assassination wasn't Zhuang Jin's doing. It wasn't that he knew the agreement between Empress Dowager Zhuang and Princess Ning'an, but he understood Empress Dowager Zhuang's means. She usually didn't make a move. Once she made a move, it would be a fatal blow. If the assassination was ordered by her, then His Majesty wouldn't be alive. But that person knew His Majesty's whereabouts like the back of her hand. She must have planted a spy in the palace. The old chancellor pondered silently for a while in his courtyard. After thinking a lot, he finally decided to apologize and thank Zhuang Jinsi. The apology was because of his carelessness and exposed this misunderstood relationship, which made the already cold relationship between His Majesty and Zhuang Jinsi even worse. And the thank you was because Zhuang Jinsi spoke up for him. Whether His Majesty believed it or not, he didn't care. Of course, he was still loyal to His Majesty. He wouldn't betray His Majesty for Zhuang Jinsi. But these were two different things. This didn't affect him from apologizing and thanking Zhuang Jinsi. What's more, she was misunderstood by her adopted son. She must be sad, right? After all, His Majesty was someone she loved. Thinking of this, the old chancellor felt that it was even more necessary to comfort Zhuang Jinsi. Zhuang Jinsi went to the Zhao residence next door. The old chancellor made a draft in his heart. How should he comfort Zhuang Jinsi when he saw her in a while, and not make her sad? Thinking of this, he entered the Zhao residence. But who could tell him what he saw? 2 circles. Empress Dowager Zhuang crossed her legs and played a leaf card domineeringly. Where was the slightest bit of sadness and grievance on her face? She was clearly in high spirits. The old chancellor's mouth twitched fiercely. Why did he think that she would be sad? Did this woman know how to write the word sad? Empress Dowager Zhuang threw out her cards confidently. Win. Pay up. The old chancellor. The emperor's wound was in danger of being infected at any time. He could only stay in Baishui Alley to recuperate. The emperor wanted to find eunuch Wei, so Gu Jiao informed Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing found the unconscious eunuch Wei in a sewer. It turned out that eunuch Wei used his last breath to find the emperor last night, who knew that the sewer cover overturned and he fell into it. His injury was also very serious. However, the old chancellor also lost his horse, so Gu Jiao simply placed eunuch Wei next door. At noon, Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't return to the palace and stayed at home for lunch. Little Jing Kong didn't come back for lunch today. Madame Yao and Nanny Fong went to the temple to burn incense again. Only Gu Jiao, Empress Dowager Zhuang, Gu Chongqing, the emperor, and the old chancellor were at home. The emperor only had one serious injury, and the rest were all minor injuries. He could still eat at the table. However, this made the atmosphere quite awkward. The emperor said coldly, "Why are you all standing? Sit down, am I a tyrant? I don't even give my officials a bite to eat?" The old chancellor braced himself and sat down. Gu Chongqing also sat down. Gu Jiao brought the last bowl of cornkeel soup from the kitchen, and habitually began to ladle soup for everyone. After filling a bowl, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She looked up and saw that the emperor and her grandaunt were staring at her. The bowl of soup in her hand. Gu Jiao, digression. I just took a look. I'm 3 votes away from 100. Please vote. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112127385. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 308. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Originally, when they were eating at home, the first bowl of soup was originally given to the son-in-law, because it was usually her granduncle who cooked and it was hard for him to cook. But now, Gu Jiao inexplicably felt that if this bowl of soup was given to the son-in-law, it would probably take the son-in-law's life. The old chancellor's heart was also trembling. He was afraid that this girl would be filial to him and give him the soup. If that happened, his position as the male head of the family wouldn't be able to be cleared. He would be chopped into mince meat and made into soup by His Majesty. Gu Jiao put down the spoon and slightly handed the soup to her grandaunt. The emperor's eyes were like knives. Gu Jiao paused and slightly moved the soup to the emperor's direction. Her grandaunt's eyes were like knives. Gu Chongqing didn't even need to think about it. Gu Jiao silently brought the soup back to her, picked up the spoon and drank it. The two snorted and also started to eat. This meal was still made by the old chancellor. Yuya Er's cooking skills weren't bad, but it was a bit difficult to serve the emperor's crafty taste. The old chancellor made 5 dishes and 1 soup, mainly taking care of Empress Dowager Zhuang and Gu Jiao's taste. He didn't know what the emperor and Gu Chongqing liked to eat. Fortunately, Gu Chongqing wasn't picky and the emperor and Empress Dowager Zhuang's taste was unexpectedly similar. Empress Dowager Zhuang liked to eat something sweet, such as the sugar-skin duck. After taking out of the pot, the crispy duck was poured with a layer of malt sugar and sprinkled with a few white sesame seeds. The skin was crisp and the meat was tender, salty and sweet but not greasy. Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao didn't eat much of this dish. It mainly went into the stomach of Empress Dowager Zhuang and the emperor. The other dish was the brown sugar glutinous rice cake. The old chancellor originally made 2 plates. One was sprinkled with sesame seeds, which Zhuang Jins liked to eat. The other one wasn't sprinkled with sesame seeds, which Gu Jiao liked to eat. After that, the emperor did not touch the plate with sesame seeds. He also liked to eat dishes with sesame seeds. The emperor had been eating alone in the palace, and would only go to the harem occasionally. The last time he ate at the same table as Empress Dowager Zhuang was when Princess Ning and concubine Jing were both in the palace. At that time, he and Empress Dowager Zhuang had not yet broken off their relationship. He treated her as a loving mother and trusted her wholeheartedly. He thought that she also treated him like her own son and cared for him just like consort Jing's mother. Reality was cruel. After helping him ascend to the throne, her disguise was gradually torn apart. She became detestable and unfamiliar. She had even gone so far as to lay her hands on imperial concubine Jing, in order to prevent her from becoming the Empress Dowager of a nation. He had long been adopted by consort Jing, so he was her son. Why couldn't consort Jing be the Empress Dowager? The funny thing was that consort Jing's mother was still speaking up for her even after being forced into the nunnery. She said that everything she did was for the sake of Zhao country, and asked her not to hate her. She even said that she would understand the Empress Dowager's painstaking efforts one day. What painstaking efforts? One year, there was a snowstorm in the capital, and consort Jing's mother almost died of illness in the nunnery. As the emperor of a nation, he actually knelt in the snow outside Rinshou Palace and begged her to bring consort Jing back. But she didn't. So he took a step back and begged her to give consort Jing the Tianshan Snow Lotus to prolong her life. She didn't do that either. She didn't save her. She forgot how consort Jing's mother had blocked the sword for her when the Liu family wanted to get rid of her. She also forgot how consort Jing's mother had risked her life to steal the edict and burn it when the previous emperor had left behind a will for her to be buried with him. She had no heart. She was a vicious woman who repaid kindness with ingratitude. Your Majesty. Gu Jiao called out to him. The emperor came back to his senses and looked in the direction that Gu Jiao was looking at. He saw that he had been in a daze and had unknowingly picked up a piece of brown sugar glutinous rice cake that Empress Dowager Zhuang had picked up. This was the last piece of brown sugar glutinous rice cake, sprinkled with sesame seeds. The emperor was embarrassed. No matter how much he hated Empress Dowager Zhuang, he shouldn't have disregarded his status and snatched a piece of brown sugar glutinous rice cake from her. If this spread out, where would the emperor put his face? In order to show that he didn't deliberately do such a childish thing, he coughed lightly and said seriously, I originally wanted to give it to Imperial Mother. I didn't expect Imperial Mother to pick it up herself. Everyone. It was obviously the Empress Dowager who picked it up first. If you want to smooth things over, you don't have to think that we're all blind. Empress Dowager Zhuang wouldn't be polite with him. She picked it up and ate it without a care. The world was big, but eating was the most important thing. Empress Dowager Zhuang's appetite would never be affected by anything. Seeing her so carefree, the emperor was so angry that he couldn't even eat properly. After eating, Gu Chongqing helped the emperor back to his room. The emperor lay on a bed that wasn't too wide. He didn't like hard beds, but he also didn't like soft beds. This level was just right. Although the room was small and the furnishings were simple, it inexplicably gave him a sense of peace and stability. It was as if everything was placed where he wanted it. No one knew that the emperor of the Zhao kingdom had a small problem of being afraid of the dark. On the bedside table, there was an old metal box with a candle and a match in it. The candle was new and was obviously just a backup. He remembered that when he was a child, Consort Jing always left a candle and match at his bedside. He didn't expect the little miracle doctor to be so considerate. In fact, the rules in the palace were strict. Matches couldn't be placed close to the bed. But Consort Jing knew that he was afraid of the dark. Thinking of Consort Jing, the emperor's eyes became moist. He had to get rid of that vicious woman as soon as possible. Only then could he take Consort Jing back to the palace and live out the rest of her life. Gu Chongqing stayed in Jadewater Alley to protect the emperor. Eunuch Wei's left arm was fractured. Gu Jiao had already put a plaster cast on it. In addition, he also needed some medicine to replenish blood and qi to help him recover. Gu Jiao decided to go to the medical center again. She ran into Gu Qingfeng as soon as she got the medicine. Gu Qingfeng was wearing a mask in broad daylight, but he was also wearing second young Master Gu's clothes. Gu Jiao looked at him strangely. "What's wrong? You're disfigured and can't see people?" Gu Qingfeng choked. Wasn't his face disfigured? His face was still swollen from the slap from the old man this morning. Gu Qingfeng cleared his throat and said seriously, "Don't worry about my face. I came to find you today for a serious matter." "What is it?" Gu Jiao said mildly. Gu Qingfeng looked around and whispered to Gu Jiao, "Someone wants to assassinate His Majesty." Gu Jiao said, "It's not an assassination, it's already been done." Gu Qingfeng was shocked. "What? Already done? So fast? I just heard the news yesterday." Gu Jiao asked, "Where did you hear it?" Gu Qingfeng said, "Celestial Music House." Gu Jiao was slightly surprised. "You went to Celestial Music House? Isn't that place very hard to get in?" Gu Chongqing had said before that there must be a way in. Normally, it would be a recommendation from an acquaintance. It was a pity that a gentleman like Gu Chongqing did not know anyone who could enter Celestial Music House. Gu Qingfeng waved his hand. "I quietly snuck in and was almost discovered. I accidentally heard that someone was plotting to assassinate His Majesty. However, I did not expect them to act so quickly. They were plotting in the afternoon and they acted at night. No wonder His Majesty did not go to court today. He originally wanted to go to Celestial Music House to inquire about the news. He wanted to see if there really was someone who wanted to assassinate His Majesty, and where the time and place of the assassination was. He was not the same as his elder brother. He did not have the heart of an official who was loyal to His Majesty. He also did not have the loyalty to protect the country. He was just a wastrel from the Marquis Manor, a great bandit. But no matter how idle he was, he understood that Marquis Ding and Manor and His Majesty were grasshoppers on the same rope. So in his heart he did not want anything to happen to His Majesty. Gu Jiao asked, "You came today to tell me this?" "I came." "No." Gu Chengfeng suddenly found that he had been led by the nose by this girl. He took back the initiative. "How did you know that His Majesty was attacked by an assassin? I didn't even hear the news." His Majesty being attacked by an assassin was a big matter. It was normal for the palace to block the news, but he had his own ways. He did not believe that this girl would be faster than him. Gu Jiao calmly said, "I picked up His Majesty and brought him back." Gu Qingfeng. This was also possible. Gu Qingfeng's face under the mask was exceptionally spectacular. It was a pity that Gu Jiao could not see it. "If there's nothing else, I'm leaving." Gu Jiao did not have the time to chat with him. Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth. Thinking of the words he was about to say, He felt a trace of pride. I came to sell you a piece of information. Didn't you always want to know who was the mastermind behind the scenes that almost killed elder brother and Gu Yan? You know? Gu Jiao turned to look at him. Gu Chengfeng took out a token from his bosom. Look at what this is. What? Gu Jiao did not understand. Gu Chengfeng raised his eyebrows and said, This is the token of Immortal Music House. Whether it was the assassin who went to the barracks that night to assassinate my elder brother, or the assassin who almost killed His Majesty last night, they are all related to Immortal Music House. As long as you enter Immortal Music House, you will definitely be able to find out about the other party. Gu Jiao reached out to take the token. Gu Chengfeng was guarding against this move of hers. He hid the token behind his back and stretched out his other hand, saying, 1,000 taels, no bargaining. Gu Jiao rubbed her chin. Gu Chengfeng took a step back and said, Don't even think about snatching it from me. If you dare to use force, I will destroy the token so that you will never be able to enter Immortal Music House again. Don't think that there will be a second one. Let me tell you, I spent a lot of effort to get this one. That place is heavily guarded, and is much harder to break into than the marshal's mansion. He was serious. He had been cheated by this girl so many times. This time he must get back at her. All right, 1,000 taels it is. Gu Jiao agreed. She agreed so easily? Could it be a scam? Gu Chengfeng looked at Gu Jiao suspiciously. He had been persecuted so many times that if she did not persecute him, he would feel that it was unreal. Gu Jiao said, I don't have that much money on me. Can I owe you first? Gu Chengfeng said without hesitation, No. One hand for the money, and the other hand for the goods. Gu Jiao spread her hands. But I don't have it. Want to act shamelessly? Aha! Gu Chengfeng took out a pen and paper that he had already prepared. I knew you would act shamelessly. Here, write an IOU. I will go to your clinic to get it later. Gu Jiao pursed her lips and looked at him with hidden bitterness. She took the pen and paper and wrote an IOU. Sign it. Gu Chengfeng reminded. Did this girl think that he was illiterate? She did not even sign it. Whose IOU was it? Gu Jiao unwillingly took out a seal from her bosom. She opened the seal, blew on it, and stamped it. Now it's done, right? Gu Chengfeng accepted the IOU with satisfaction, and threw the seal to her. Gu Chengfeng knew this girl too well. Her promises could never be trusted. Don't look at how she gave him the banknotes at this moment. Who knows, she might knock him unconscious and snatch the banknotes away. See you later. Ha ha. Gu Chengfeng waved his arms and ran away as if he was reincarnated. Gu Chengfeng ran 2 streets in one breath. When he was sure that Gu Jiao did not chase after him, he leaned against the wall and gasped for breath. He took out the IOU that Gu Jiao gave him. Smelly girl, you've finally fallen into my hands. He was so proud of himself that he looked at the IOU over and over again. As he looked at it, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. The seal was upside down. When he glanced at it, he understood the word Gu, and no longer suspected her. But now, he held up the seal and looked at it carefully under the sunlight. He saw 4 words printed on it. Gu Changqing seal. Gu Chengfeng spat out a mouthful of blood. After all this time, he actually got an IOU from his elder brother? Why would this girl have his elder brother's seal in her hands? If he took 1,000 taels IOU to his elder brother to collect the debt, he would be beaten into fertilizer by his elder brother. Gu Chengfeng suddenly remembered Gu Jiao's resentful eyes. If it was not for that gaze, he would not be so easily fooled. He did not see her for a few days and she actually learned how to act. Who taught her? He was so angry. So angry. Ah. Gu Jiao first returned to Jade Water Lane and ordered Yuya, to boil medicine for eunuch Wei. Afterwards, she changed her clothes and headed to Immortal Music Residence. Although she did not have enough evidence, her intuition told Gu Jiao that the person who tried to assassinate the emperor, and the person who tried to sow discord between Marquis Ding and Fu and the marshals Fu came from the same power. The other side's ultimate goal in trying to sow discord between Marquis Ding and Fu and the marshals Fu was to drive a wedge between the emperor and her great-aunt. But unexpectedly, they failed, so they simply came to assassinate the emperor. As the other side wished, The emperor determined that her great-aunt was the murderer. Truly a sly person. Gu Jiao indifferently looked at Immortal Music Residence's signboard. Killing intent flashed through her eyes. The newest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112101371. HTML Genius 1 second remember this website address. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 309. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. As the fastest rising brothel in the capital, Immortal Music House overshadowed the former Soft Jade Pavilion. Apart from the fact that the girls inside were all fairy-like and talented, its unique business model was also enough to whet the appetite of the capital's influential officials. Gu Jiao arrived at the door. The guard at the door was a woman. The woman looked at Gu Jiao's token and didn't say anything as she let her in. It was Gu Jiao's first visit to a brothel, so it was quite refreshing. There was no extravagance, toasting, exchanging of cups, singing of orioles and dancing of swallows as he imagined. The music here was not decadent, but like the sounds of nature. Walking in the spacious lobby, from time to time, girls would pass by her. Gu Jiao casually glanced at them. They really were fairies. It was as if she had entered a fairyland, just a little bit away from becoming a fairy. Suddenly, a begonia flower fell on Gu Jiao's shoulder. Gu Jiao didn't reach out to catch it, letting the flower fall to the ground. From the railing on the second floor came a soft sigh. Young master doesn't want this servant's flower. Does he dislike this servant? This sentence shattered the fairyland filter in front of Gu Jiao's eyes. Finally, there was a hint of a brothel. Gu Jiao raised her head. She was wearing a mask that covered her nose and face, but it didn't cover her rosy lips and delicate chin. It also didn't cover her pair of cold eyes. Oh! The girl upstairs let out a cry of surprise, and couldn't help but straighten her body. Gu Jiao's figure was considered tall for a woman, and with her valiant temperament, there was no pressure for her to act as a handsome young master. The girl's cry of surprise attracted several companions. Everyone stood on the railing on the second floor and looked at Gu Jiao. Young master, look at me. Someone waved a handkerchief at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao may not have eaten pork, but she has seen pigs walk. She has the spare time to strike up a conversation with a strange man. In Xianle House, she can't be considered a very powerful person. Her target wasn't them. The few of them tried to seduce Gu Jiao for a long time, but there was no response, so they couldn't help but complain. How disappointing, isn't it? Even our sister Lianxiang looks down on him. I wonder who he's here for? Lianxiang was the girl who threw the begonia flowers at Gu Jiao. Could it be that she's here for Sister Qianxue? Sister Qianxue can see him. Who wants to see me? A lazy and gentle voice sounded from the end of the corridor. Several girls who were chatting about Gu Jiao turned around and bowed respectfully. Sister Qianxue. The girl who was called elder sister looked to be around 17 or 18 years old. She was actually younger than a few of them, but Immortal Music House had never been ranked based on age. What are you looking at? The girl asked. She was wearing a plain white inner garment with a light yellow gauze outer garment. The color was bright, fresh and elegant, making people's eyes light up. She was wearing a veil that was the same color as the gauze, hazy. Her outline was vaguely visible, but it wasn't clear. Even women couldn't help but be attracted to her. The girl seemed to be accustomed to this and no longer expected them to answer her. Instead, she turned her head and looked downstairs. Oh! She also let out a small cry of surprise, her eyebrows slightly raised, and her eyes turned. A very clean young master has come. Bring him up. This person, I want him. After she finished speaking, she turned around and went up to the third floor. The servant girl behind her answered yes and stepped downstairs. She came to Gu Jiao and bowed to Gu Jiao. Young master, my family's miss invites you. Gu Jiao gave her a look. Not going. The servant girl choked. Do you know who my family's miss is? Gu Jiao gave her a small look again. Oh, who is it? The servant girl put her hands on her hips. My family's miss is Immortal Music House's courtesan. Others want to see her, but can't. My family's miss wants to see you because she thinks highly of you. These words weren't exaggerated at all. Immortal Music House's courtesan only sold her skills, and not her body. Every 3 days, she would only receive one person for 2 hours each time. Even so, those stinky men in the capital who wanted to be her guest were still as numerous as carps crossing the river. The courtesan should be a big fish. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and nodded to the servant girl, indicating that she accepted her family's miss's invitation. The servant girl had a headache. Was it an illusion? Why did she feel that this young master's expression just now was weighing the pros and cons? No matter what, her family's miss wanted to see him. No matter how strange the master was, he had to bring her up to see him. Gu Jiao followed the servant girl to the third floor. She didn't notice how jealous the guests below looked at her. It was very difficult to enter Immortal Music House. In Immortal Music House, it wasn't the guests who chose the ladies, but the ladies who chose the guests. Those who were lucky could be chosen to go up to the second floor. Those who were unlucky could only have a lonely night tour in the main hall. Those who went up to the third floor could be counted on one hand. Of course, Gu Jiao didn't know how lucky she was, but she could faintly feel that the third floor was particularly quiet. Miss, the young master is here. The servant girl reported from outside the door. Come in. The woman said. The woman's smile froze on her face. Young master means that I'm not beautiful enough? Gu Jiao wrote. If you want to say it like that, I can't do anything about it. The woman was so angry that she forgot to ask Gu Jiao why he didn't speak, and only wrote on the paper. She was the #1 courtesan of Xianlu House, the #1 beauty in the capital. How could there be a day when she was despised for her looks? She angrily said, Young master, when did you go blind? Gu Jiao scribbled. I'm not blind, I just don't think you're particularly good-looking. Not as good-looking as my husband. This sentence simply drew the woman's hatred to the max. The woman was so angry that she sent a palm strike towards Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao's figure dodged. The wind from the palm strike fell on the chair behind Gu Jiao, shattering the mahogany chair into pieces. Sure enough, she has martial arts. Gu Jiao put away the brush and small notebook, and began to fight with her in the room. The woman's martial arts were so high that it was beyond Gu Jiao's expectations. Fortunately, she had received guidance from the old marquis, so there were a few moves that could restrain the opponent's moves. Gu Jiao pinned the woman's hands behind her back, and pressed her on the bed. But the woman was far more cunning than what she showed. She twisted her body and slid out of Gu Jiao's body like a loach. Taking advantage of Gu Jiao's unpreparedness, she threw Gu Jiao onto the bed. Her hands clasped Gu Jiao's hands, and her legs pressed down on Gu Jiao's legs. Saying that this old lady isn't beautiful enough, this old lady will take off your mask and see what kind of virtue you have. Daring to say that this old lady isn't beautiful. She used her right hand to clasp Gu Jiao's wrists above her head, and raised her left hand to take off Gu Jiao's mask. But Gu Jiao broke free of her shackles, and kicked her to the inside of the bed. She took the initiative, and pressed down on her hands and legs. Gu Jiao sat on her lap, untied her hair tie, and tied her hands to the bedpost. The woman struggled, and her clothes slipped, revealing a large area of snow-white skin. The woman was ashamed and angry. Gu Jiao took out the small notebook again and scribbled. Who was the person who tried to assassinate the emperor last night? The woman was startled. Gu Jiao was actually not sure if she knew, but she was the top courtesan here, and her status and martial arts were so high, so it was very likely that she knew. Perhaps she was also involved. The woman chuckled. I am a prostitute, how would I know about the current emperor's matters? Young master, did you find the wrong person? If you want to investigate a case, shouldn't you go to the yamen? Gu Jiao wrote. Shouldn't a normal person's first reaction be to ask if the emperor was assassinated? Gu Qingfeng reacted this way. The woman choked on the spot. Gu Jiao wrote domineeringly, if you don't tell me, I will take off your clothes and do you on the spot. The woman's expression changed, but then she smiled slowly. All right, come on. If you don't mind my jade arms and body, then go ahead and do it. I was the one who took a liking to young master. It is my fortune to be able to serve young master. But, as she spoke, she glanced under Gu Jiao's clothes and laughed. Young master doesn't seem to be interested in me. Gu Jiao thought. I didn't arm you, fake melon. The woman looked at Gu Jiao meaningfully. Young master, your skin is so white, your appearance is so delicate, and your body is so thin. In front of such a beautiful woman like me, you are still indifferent. Young master, you can't be a male. Before she finished speaking, Gu Jiao tore her outer clothes, threw it under the bed, and looked at her fiercely. At this moment, the door was suddenly knocked open, and a drunk man rushed in. In the blink of an eye, Gu Jiao grabbed the long gown on the ground and covered the woman's body, covering her completely. Oh, what's wrong with you? Why did you let someone break into Miss Qianshue's room? Miss Qianxue is receiving a guest. Can you afford to pay for ruining Miss Qianshue's mood? It was the woman's personal maid who spoke fiercely. Sorry, Miss Qianxue. A female guard entered the room without looking sideways and grabbed the drunkard out. Then Gu Jiao got down from the bed and didn't force the woman to answer. She turned and walked towards the door. The woman was already stunned the moment she was wrapped in Gu Jiao's clothes. When she saw Gu Jiao let her go and leave just like that, her eyes moved slightly. Don't you want to know who the murderer is? Not in this way. Gu Jiao turned and left Immortal Delight House. If it was in her previous life, she would use all means to force a confession. After all, from childhood to adulthood, this was what her godfather taught her. But in this life, it seemed that something was different. Gu Jiao looked at her hands. Suddenly, a small box fell into her palm. Gu Jiao raised her head and looked at the third floor of Immortal Delight House, but only saw a window that was closed in a fit of pique. Gu Jiao opened the small box. Inside, there was a pendant of a tassel and a note. Imperial Palace, southwest corner. The murderer is from the Imperial Palace and lives in the southwest corner. And this tassel is the murderer's personal item. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1120987828. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.